Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. It is 6:07, and this is a Budget and Public Employees Committee. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanier. Vice Chair Browning.
Present.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devotie. Chair Aldrich.
Present.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devotie. 3 present. We have quorum.
Thank you. With that, we have established a quorum. The next item of business will be item number 3, approval of the minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, February 25th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
It was moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderman from the 9th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanier.
Aye.
Vice Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devotie. Chair Aldrich.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devotie. 3 aye votes.
Thank you. With that, we have approved the minutes from Wednesday, February 25th. Next item of business, we do not have any board bills for review, no resolutions, and today for the committee discussion, under discussion item number 1 will be the RAM settlement interest money, which we will hear from the Office of Recovery to give an update, our monthly update on the status of how much of the funds that have been spent from the RAM interest and where they have been spent on. So with that, we'll be respectful of everybody's time and jump right in and have the Office of Recovery come up and present the presentation. Madam Clerk, when you get a second, if you could pull that up, that would be great. If anybody that wants to speak on the presentation or on the RAM settlement as a whole, we have a sign-up sheet up front by our clerk. There are also some extra packets for people that want to follow along on the update that's going to be provided that will be on the TV screen. But if you like a physical copy, we do have some. And as soon as we get that up on the screen, Mr. Nix, just state your first and last name, your title, and then you can proceed.
Julian Nix, Chief Recovery Officer, St. Louis, Office of Mayor Kara Spencer. Thank you all again for allowing us to be here for our monthly meeting, sharing an update on where we are with the broader tornado recovery, but also RAM's interests overall. We'll skip through the first couple of pages for those who've been here for a while, just are simply there to outline higher level what the outcomes are from the Recovery Office as of the last update on March 23rd, and then a page to give an overall overview of the summary of dollars and where it goes by program. We want to provide that just as a consistent way for people to understand where we are from a broader aspect of the recovery, but I won't go through that one in a lot of detail. So a little bit on kind of how we structured the agenda here today. For those who haven't joined us before in person, we usually like to just walk through the context of the work that's happening on the ground, both from an overall view from me, from the Recovery Office, but also, if we go to the next page, but also give you a better view of what's happening across our core focus areas within the Recovery Office. So today, I'll give a high-level strategic update on where we are, the talk through recovered residents, which is our work to support resident recovery, and our core work there as we move from the broader winter safety operations into more of our continued network coordination and support, and then also our work on repaired properties, demolition, debris, and repair. We provide that context because naturally the numbers are in the context of that's being performed on the ground, and so they inform when we get into the numbers how we're thinking about our work day in and day out from a Recovery Office standpoint. So if we go to the next page here, so this is just a general reminder for the group on where we're focused as a Recovery Office, which is really to help residents believe it's worth it to stay or return. And that's really centered in 3 principles: convincing people that their home is safe, their neighborhood is a future, and there's a plan for me, with an overall goal of making sure we can connect all of our residents to support, find the funding to ideally make 100% of eligible homes eligible for our programs repaired, get the debris removed, as well as public infrastructure restored. And so we'll keep working toward those ambitious outcomes as we move through the months ahead. So as we go to the next page here, as we move into this next quarter, so looking at April and June, you might remember that before our focus was on winter safety and getting ready to scale up around visible debris removal and repairs. And we shifted as we look at the next 3 months. Still not super significantly different, but our work around our recovered residents is really focusing on support network coordination. So we're really focusing on how we improve the navigation of recovery supports for residents within the existing programs that we already have set up. We set up some minor additional programs as we've moved through the work, but has largely been getting the existing programs to work better, work easier for residents as they move through that overall system. The second focus is visible debris removal and repairs. We started talking about how we were setting up the infrastructure and that work would start to ramp up in March. We are seeing that start to ramp up on the back half of this month, so we'll talk a little bit more about how we're accelerating visible progress on demolition and repairs in neighborhoods in March, but it'll be much more in full-fledged from April through June. So if we go to the next page here. So just a little bit on kind of the few key takeaways from my side. So my team will go a lot more in depth in each of these various areas as we kind of walk through today's agenda. But if I just want to give the summary from my view as the lead of the recovery office, is one, that our winter operations, which we set up that put over 100 families into hotels and even more into shelters, have been successfully demobilized. That was and successful demobilization for us meant that every single person who was in shelter or housing was offered and given the option to find a safe transition housing for the next phase of their recovery effort. And we are now shifting our focus again to improving resident navigation experience and long-term recovery support, which Jennifer Brinkman, who leads this effort for my team, will talk more about. Our top priority, where I'm spending the disproportionate amount of my time and a lot of my team's broader resources, is on visible neighborhood recovery, really focusing on scaling demolition and repairs on private property. As many people may remember, private property is very different. We had a lot of work happening on the public right-of-way. We closed our application on February 28th for private property assistance, which was our ability to understand who needs support and to be able to start providing and prioritizing folks for those programs. That did close, so we'll talk a little bit more about the final application numbers that we landed at. But now we're focusing on now delivering services. So we launched our new revised demolition program. So we did have demolitions coming up within the zone, but we've launched it under a new structure that allows us to actually scale. For those who may remember, the number of demolitions were moving very, very slow. And so we have a plan for about 250 to 275 structures to be demolished by August. So that is only in about 5 short months. And to think about the overall effort from a city perspective, we've only done about 30 to 40, I believe, in the last year. So it's a massive increase that's been supported by the programs and infrastructure that we set up. We started our first set of demolitions last week with 2 or 3 under the new program. We're going to do about 4 this week. We're going to do 8 next week, and we're going to ramp up 10, 15, 20 until we reach the scale that'll help us reach these overall ambitions or goals. The second is our rapid repair and what we're calling our program, which is focused on about 150 to 200 homes to be completed by October. Work will continue to accelerate into April, and that's out of the initial funding that we have, and then we'll continue to launch more homes as more funding is made available. And then we're focused on defining the path forward on hazardous trees, stump removal, and sidewalk repairs. I know for some of the auditors who were able to attend the briefing earlier today, we have seen some issues with our contractors in delivering that work, primarily driven by the volume is too small for them to be comfortable with the work. So we're working with our contractors to figure out how we can get enough volume for them to feel good starting on that work. So we're currently actively working through that. The next one here is the city recovery spending is expected to drastically accelerate as this work starts to begin. A lion's share of our funds were invested against demolition and invested against rapid repair. So as those work scale, so will the expenditures in the community. So right now we have spent $63 million to date in city-directed, city-managed funds spent through this period in March, with a path to $100 million by June and $120 million out by September. And that's out of a total of $138 million city-managed dollars. That means it's not necessarily city-directed resources, aka it may not have come from a city board bill or a general reserve, but it's money that's been allocated from the state, federal government to the city, and we control when and how those dollars move. You'll see that there's 2/3 of those dollars that are not managed by the city. Those sit with our state and federal partners, and we're reliant on them to actually distribute those sources of funds as they move through. So we look forward to continuing to work with the Board of Aldermen on additional funding package. We know continues to be needs in the community that we'll need to be prepared to respond to, both on the repair side as well as other areas as we move forward. So we look forward to the continued discussions on that we'll have in the upcoming weeks. But with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer Brinkman from my team to give an update on our recovered residents.
Good evening. Jennifer Brinkman, Director of Recovery Innovation in the Office of Recovery. Next slide, please. So our goals from the last time we met were to continue to connect our eligible residents to case management, to demobilize the winter sheltering operations with safe options for all of those who are in our NCS program. We'll talk more about that. And then to enhance the coordination across our network of providers that have been engaged by the city for. Next slide, please. This shows you the range of the services in the portfolio under the recovered residents pillar, from case management, where we have the 40 case workers from the United Way Managed Disaster Case Management Network, as well as the community health workers of the Integrated Health Network. We've reached more than 1,300 people to enroll them in disaster case management through that outreach. There were 600 households plus reached with winter safety and other supports, which included utility assistance. We found that critical for folks over the last few years. The non-congregate shelters, we'll talk more about that in the next slide. Rental assistance and impacted tenants fund are both continuing. You can see there's significant acceleration in the rental assistance program in particular, with $1.2 million already spent on leases of the 112 approved. The nonprofit supports that you see listed here, from the resilience hubs to utility assistance, the legal supports, and the behavioral health supports, along with the food, are all things that our case managers can access and help refer people. We'll talk more about how people navigate. Next slide. We wanted to share with you where we're seeing people move with the rental assistance program. So on the left, you can see the impacted residents. So that's their address at the time of the tornado. And then you can see on the other side where people have relocated. So we do see some dispersion across the city, but we are seeing a fair number stay on the north side. Next slide. This also gives you a sense of our demobilization from the hoteling program and how all these services are beginning to work together. Where we had the IHN, a majority of those folks were connected with the IHN, the community health workers again, who then helped get people connected to rental assistance and then to a disaster case manager. So this again begins to allow us to see the network and how they're working together to work between the various programs that we've stood up. Next slide. In terms of those transitions out, again, it's a network of providers that we relied on. Many of these are funded through the state's MHDC program, as well as our disaster case management agencies funded by this city. So you can see the proportion of folks who were transitioned to what partners. Next slide. We know that all of these programs on their own are doing good things, but when they work together, we get residents closer to recovery. So this is just one resident journey, but we know that when people enter our programs, they're not always entering at the place that gets them connected to everything they need at once. So ideally, we might come into contact with someone at the Resilience Hub. While they're there, they meet their community health worker who can meet their immediate needs with helping connect them to utility assistance or rental assistance. And then they get to their disaster case manager that can work with them over an extended period of time. But we know that's not how it's always working for folks. Next slide. We are hearing that people are still learning about recovery programs. For example, our rental assistance program, more than 40% didn't apply for FEMA. People also said they've applied for STL recovers, and that could be any number of programs. So that indicates to us that we need more of a single front door entry program. Residents are asked to prove impact, that they were impacted repeatedly in multiple ways, sometimes different definitions across all the recovery programs. And so we need to look at how do we align that for folks. And then we also know that the financial need is significant of the population. 60% of rental assistance applicants report incomes of $20,000 or less. So these learnings will influence how we go forward and think about creating a care network of coordination to address these concerns that we're hearing. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Laura.
Good evening. Laura again. I am an employee of St. Louis Development Corporation, serving the Office of Recovery, leading the repaired properties work. So we're going to start with a slide you've seen repeatedly now of kind of what are the pillars under the repaired properties portfolio. If you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we have public infrastructure recovery on the left. Not going to spend too much time on that today, but just to recap that we're still continuing to work through the remaining kind of hazardous street trees, parks trees, going back and removing any remaining stumps left behind by those tree removals, and then working towards sidewalk repairs for those uprooted trees that cause sidewalk damage, in addition to working towards the long-term tree canopy restoration plan with the goal of replacing all lost trees at a 3-to-1 ratio. And that work's being led out of Forestry and Green City Coalition with other partners at the table. What we've added to the deck for today that wasn't here in previous versions is kind of calling out who are the key kind of contractors or consultants that are supporting these bodies of work. So want to point out for kind of project management assistance with street trees, stumps, and sidewalks, particularly submitting that work to FEMA for reimbursement where it's eligible. That's Tetra Tech. And then, as I mentioned, the long-term planning is more in-house with Forestry and with Green City Coalition, which is a partnership between the Planning Department, LRA, Forestry, Missouri Department of Conservation. So they're getting closer to kind of that long-term, really 10-year plan for tree canopy. So then switching to private property, we have the first one is that centralized intake process of kind of getting applicants in that need any sort of assistance on their private property, conducting a site assessment, completing things like asbestos inspections when that's relevant, reviewing that applicant and that property to determine what type of program is a good fit to meet those needs, and what type of funding sources so we can properly route them into the various programs, often many programs per property, not just one. And on the back end of all of that, ensuring that we have all of the documentation and compliance we need to fit any one of those funding pathways. Most of that work is led by Tetra Tech, a consulting firm with experience in disaster recovery, documentation compliance. So they're your application kind of intake and processing, and then maintenance of the full documentation through the life of a property. Then when we switch to the final two pillars, that's more about then assigning particular programs to properties and moving forward with the work, and that's usually either repair or demolition, and crosswalk there. So under repair, of course, we've been leading up to the launch of our rapid repair program for many months now. That is officially up and running. And now as a subcomponent of rapid repair, we've moved that emergency tarp and board stabilization as kind of a subcomponent of rapid repair so that while you're on the wait list for repair services, we can be sure to provide any sort of weatherization and improved tarping during that waiting period. In this transition, we've switched away from, we were using donated materials this whole time, so we had a lot of donated lumber and tarps. Bagpipes are a good twist. We had a lot of donated lumber and tarps that we were working through so far, but those were those kind of blue standard tarps from Home Depot that don't have a great shelf life. So as of this week, all tarps are 12 millimeter minimum that can last 1 to 2 years. So kind of increasing the material and the standards of that RAP program for the temporary weatherization. All of that, the rapid repair and the RAP, is managed by SLS Co., which I'll talk about more in a minute, a construction management firm who puts together scopes of work and works with our local general contractor community to provide those services. Then on to demolition and debris. There are kind of various programs and funding pots depending on the property and whether it's FEMA eligible or not. So we have, for applicants who have come forward, submitted an application and requested demolition services. We submit those to the state of Missouri. They determine if those are eligible for FEMA funding, which is their funding source, and if so, they'll be moving forward with those contracted demolitions and their own third-party monitoring of those demolitions. They anticipate being able to start that work towards the end of April, and we know that some people applied for that starting in late October, so here we are 5-6 months later, finally, hopefully next month, the state being able to move on that work. In the meantime, when knowing that the FEMA funding was going to be very restrictive for demolitions, we've worked out a partnership with the state of Missouri to allocate Senate Bill $1 towards demolition of FEMA ineligible properties. The city is responsible for contracting that work, and we submit to the state for reimbursement. For those demolitions, we are deploying the same construction management firm over repair and weatherization, who again are working with our local demolition contractor community. So SLS's role is more about paying the contractors timely, holding a large bond and insurance coverage so that the smaller companies don't have that burden, and then working on sequencing and timing to make sure we're not all stepping over each other in the field. Finally, in the demo and debris removal, we have the just debris removal and tree removal private property. So that could be a standalone, or that could be, in tandem with repair or while on the wait list for repair if there are exterior or interior debris removal, hazardous trees on private property. We have AmeriCorps St. Louis that's dispatched for debris removal services, and Hanson's Tree Services that continues to provide private tree removal. Next slide. So as you know, the private property assistance application closed back on February 28th, and this is a snapshot of the total applications as of about that date. We do, however, continue to accept applications. They're flagged as late and a little lower on the priority list than others, but we are still accepting them, and as funding becomes available, would hope to move to that late applicant pool as well. So as of the deadline, we did end up with 2,700 applications for home stabilization or repair, about 220 residents specifically requesting demolition of their destroyed property, and about 200 that needed neither of those but did still need support removing debris from their private property. Those are applications only. So we mentioned in the past couple meetings that we were conducting windshield surveys and inspections to identify any of the remaining properties that were in need of demolition. That number sits at about 1,700 structures damaged by the tornado that need demolition today. So that means of those, a little over 500 are actually owned by LRA. So those are being reviewed and moved into contracting pipelines where available. So that brings us down to about 1,200 privately owned structures tagged as potentially needing demolition. Of those 1,200, you can see about 200 submitted applications and requested that service specifically. Most of that delta in between, that 1,000 privately owned buildings in need of demolition that did not submit an application, the majority of those were previously vacant and abandoned prior to the tornado. So we have begun outreach to those owners as kind of a last attempt, and will begin moving on demolition of those properties that present a public safety threat in the months to come. Next slide. So with a lot of demand and not a lot of resources, we do have to prioritize the work. So first off is identifying which programs are needed for that property, like I mentioned in the last couple of slides. And then further within that, identifying priorities for where to start. So I'll touch on a few of these. The applicant eligibility is now that we have all of the applications looking to see the properties that are actually ineligible for this program. There are a couple clear use cases here. One would be a request for assistance where there is no tornado damage or no evidence of tornado damage, or maybe really far outside of tornado zone. So people will start getting communications about those, and we'll have the opportunity to appeal that decision if we're just missing information about those properties. Also, some interesting edge cases. We've had over a dozen applications for repair for properties that were purchased from the land bank after the tornado, requesting repair. Those are not going to be eligible for repair under this program. So we're continuing to identify those types of applications that are not a good fit for tornado recovery assistance, and we'll be communicating back to those applicants in the next few weeks. Then for those applicants that are eligible, our first priority is providing repair support and stabilization support to homes that are currently occupied, particularly by seniors, children, family, and those homes that have a significant structural integrity situation where there's a safety risk involved. So occupied homes with major structural damage, and then kind of down from there. As we move forward, we'll continue to add priorities, for example, primary corridors or high-density blocks, but right now we are focused on household vulnerability and public health and safety. Next slide. So right now, we've mentioned we've been working towards kind of standing up, scaling up, repair, and demolition. Here's a snapshot of what that'll look like over the next 5 and 6 months. So with rapid repair, we're looking at about 200 homes over the next 6.5 months. Each one of those will take 30 days to complete. That's from the point of kind of task order issuance to the contractor to full project closeout. The construction itself is expected to take about 10 days per property. There are additional services that come with that repair work. So if people need temporary relocation or moving or storage of materials during that time, that's all included within the rapid repair program. And we're starting with a few crews, and we'll continue to add local contractors to that pool as properties move through to the permitting process and scope of work refinement. As of today, we had our first rapid repair building permit application submitted to the building division. There are 34 right behind it, and another 90 behind those that have been tasked to the contractor, and we'll be moving towards that phase next. So residents will start to hear communications if they've been moved from the waiting list, and we'll be progressing in these priority repairs. On the side of demolition, we've got about 250-ish that we can afford at the moment. 10 million of that is that Senate Bill 1 funding that I mentioned before. Those, similar to repair, take about 10 days from beginning to end, including kind of the water and utility disconnect all the way through the site finishing, grading. And we've started with 2-3 contractors, and each week are onboarding more and more. Well, we've only done 2 so far, so every week we add more. Next slide. So I mentioned before that rapid repairs and demolitions are being overseen by a construction management firm, so you'll hear more about them in the weeks to come, but that's SLS Co. So we went out with competitive bid for a construction management firm to manage all of the contractors and sequencing of the work, to oversee that the scope was completed in compliance with the scope and with the contracts, and really to watch our local contractor capacity and make sure that everyone's able to scale and meet the demand, or to have projects that fit their size of company. This is a firm that has experience in deploying kind of high-speed efforts post-disaster with over 55,000 homes repaired so far. Their last big project was Puerto Rico. No. Next slide. Next slide. So SLS is building out their contractor community, though. Again, they're just the construction management firm. So they're able to hold a large bond and insurance policy that carries the smaller contractors. It's distracting. And so far, again, we add more every week. Here's a list of some of the contractors that have master service agreements for repair and demolition and wrap under this program. And as the volume of work increases, you'll see the volume of contractors increase. But right now, as I mentioned, we had 1 permit for repair submitted today. We've had 17 wraps completed in the last 2 days, and we've completed 2 demolitions in the last week. So week over week, as the numbers grow, you'll see the contractor list grow. That is correct. Next slide. Right now, focus a little bit more on rapid repair for the next few slides and what that looks like. We know that we do not have enough money to repair 2,760. That is the unfortunate fact of where we are. We continue to fight for more funds, for federal funds, for state funds, for the true dollars of $500 million to $1 billion that's really needed to provide the repair, rehab, and rebuilding that's needed. And in the meantime, we're trying to make the money that we do have meet the most people that are currently living in their homes, and that is a focus on safe, sanitary, and functional housing while we continue to work to bring more dollars online. So I'm going to focus on what we mean by safe, sanitary, and functional. Next slide. We are currently working with a cap of $50,000 per property. That does not include all of the other costs I've mentioned so far, so sort of temporary relocation and storage, the cost of the construction management firm, or all the documentation and compliance. This is construction only. And these are the primary focuses of where those dollars need to be spent. So starting on the left, it's about making the structure watertight, keeping out the elements, securing, tuck pointing, roofing, whatever it takes to weatherize and secure the envelope of the structure. And then on the interior, it's removing materials that have been damaged by a tornado and what has now been weather and elements for 11 months from the home, any mold that came as a result of that, or rot, or structural integrity issues from being exposed to the elements. It's removing all of those health and safety hazards and restoring the structural integrity and safety and cleanliness inside the home. And then it's a focus on our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So ensuring that electric is safe and up to code and there are working outlets. For plumbing, it's ensuring at least 1 functional bathroom in totality and a functioning kitchen. And then that all homes have an HVAC system for safe heating and cooling. Next slide. In the event that $50,000 doesn't do all that, and that will be the case, there's an order of priority here where ideally we want to hit all of those things that I mentioned, and that's line 1, where you have a secure envelope, you've completely cleaned and cleared the interior and upgraded the full mechanical, electrical, plumbing, MEP systems. If that is not possible within the cap, then that work becomes limited to primary rooms. So this is where you might see 1 bathroom fully restored, but another not there yet. You might see a couple bedrooms fully brought back up to where they need to be, but another bedroom gutted, mold removed, safety risks removed, but not replaced with the drywall and restored to a usable place today. If none of that is feasible, we're going to focus on preserving that housing stock, which means ensuring that that home is weather-tight, watertight, and can remain standing until additional funds come along. And to make that point very, very clear, here's a photo of what that will look like on the next slide, where a room in a house could be left looking like the one on the right.
Mr. Johnson, I
I have
promise
2
you
more
gonna
slides.
just want me to give you a piece of, not being funny, want me to give you paper so you can write it down. So because you're gonna have your moment to kind of respond back to some of this.
I think I'm being very clear about what to expect.
Let us, so only way, I know, you good. Only way we could, like you say, hear the information to hold it accountable, we gotta hear it. So some of the things, if you got concerns, it will be like that space. I promise you gonna give it. We gonna hear from them, and then we go.
Some houses can be completely restored to the side on the left. It depends on the extent of damage. The damage is so extreme
But
that
let her finish too. I promise.
I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah, let's,
2 more slides. The next one, I just want to give some notice about demolition, recap, and then I'm done. So next slide, please. Note on what's different about these demolitions in the past and what you look for, and be sure to call out if it's not happening, please. 1, all residents are to receive within a 500 feet of an active demolition. Within 72 hours of that wrecking, should receive a door hanger that tells you what address, when will wrecking start, and who is the contractor, and it has tips about staying safe when there's a demolition on your block. Particularly, we know that our structures do have lead paint, so ensuring that we use proper water suppression at all times and that residents nearby are keeping doors and windows closed and staying away from any potential dust. Pretty high standards for asbestos remediation and disposal, which is overseen by third-party monitors. So you'll see a lot of lined trucks, kind of wrapped, burrito wrapped as it's called, and hauled to specific disposal facilities. With tornado damaged structures or even just with vacant collapsing structures, it's not possible to safely enter and remove asbestos prior to demolition. So all materials in that case have to be treated as asbestos containing with additional oversight, certified workers, and different disposal standards. And that is all, again, overseen by a third-party firm. And we are working with Washington University to set up real-time air quality monitoring in conjunction with work. So to recap, next slide, the private property recovery focus areas right now are really on standing up, scaling up the rapid repair and RAP programs to repair 150 to 200 homes by October. This is based on the funding that we have available today. Of course, with additional funds, those numbers increase. I've mentioned that RAP is now a subset of rapid repair, so it's more of a stepping stone towards repair with increased quality of materials. And then when we look at demolitions, our priorities for the next 2 months are continuing and increasing the rate of removal of those particularly dangerous structures that are at risk of collapsing adjacent to occupied homes. It's also launching our $10 million pilot with the state of Missouri, which that agreement was just signed about 2 weeks ago. We've submitted more than 100 properties for pre-approval, have 56 approved and moving forward toward contracting, and we'll continue to scale that up in the weeks to come. And with that, I'll go ahead and close out. Thanks.
All right. I understand. Jim Hill, Chief Cost Recovery Officer in the Recovery Office in the Office of Mayor Kara Spencer. And if you'd advance the slide, please. Just in terms of funding update, as we mentioned, we began deploying the $10 million pilot for demo and the $14 million work for rapid repair and the RAP. While that work has been deployed, when it comes to spending, as we talked in the past, it'll take 30 days or so for the work to be completed, and then another 30 days for us to receive the invoice and to pay. So work that starts now, we won't pay until mid to late May, maybe early June. We awarded 14 contracts on the March 4th ENA. What's significant about that, of the board bills that were allocated, which previously was the 43.7, all but 1.2 million of those funds have been awarded now. So most of those, the available funds from the RAMS funds and the half of the General Reserve Operating Fund have been consumed. We do have the ARPA Interest Fund, which is Board Bill 157, which was effective earlier in March, $3.8 million. Thank you. That will also be added to the home repair contract that SLS is overseeing and driving. We spent $2.6 million in March, which is consistent with what we had forecast at $2.3 million. We're learning every month as we do this. We spent a little bit more in winter sheltering and rental assistance than we expected, and a little bit less in ROA and HSA assessment as we are evaluating some of the invoices and getting some clarifications and corrections. Funds should drastically increase in April with the additional ROE HSA work, vacant unit turn payouts, and starting to incur some of the home repair costs. As we mentioned in the last meeting, funding for the recovery through June. After that point, we will require additional funding from our city, state, and federal partners to be able to continue. Next slide, please. This is the total budgeted funding by source and priority area. And as Julie had mentioned before, through the middle, there's this total city funds allocated of $138 million. Those are the funds that we control. That's a little bit different than how we presented it last month, because down below there's $226 million of federal and state funds. As we are awarded funds from the state of Missouri, for example, the first $10 million SB1 and the $1 million of the MHTC grant, those funds are now under our control and our ability to spend. And that's what this slide is trying to show. So $138 million that we control today. As we continue to work down the pipeline of properties and submit more properties for the state, we will get additional funding that then we will be able to work on. Next slide, please. Here are the 5 board bills. So the first one, Board Bill 31, the original $30 million. The next 3, which were awarded in October, Board Bills 93, 94, and 95, the $13.7 million, and then the most recent bill, Board Bill 157. Total now of $47.5 million. We've awarded $42.5, but the reality is on the 3.8 of the ARPA interest funds, the intention is at next week's special E&A meeting to award those funds to add those to the SLS contract for the home repair work. So at the end of that day, where we will be is we will have $1.2 million available to spend on these board bills, available to award on these board bills, I'm sorry. And we have $36.5 million of these funds contracted and $17.1 million of these funds spent. So again, we have after all that, we'll have $1.2 million available remaining, which we will continue to hold for emergency needs. The next slide is the $138 million and how we intend to spend it. So we've spent $63 million of that $138 million through last week. The bulk of that has been spent on resident support, which is the blue, the recovered repaired properties, which is the orange. The bulk of that work to date is on debris. As we move forward, much more, it will continue on demos, but much more of it will shift into home repair. And then the green is the emergency response, and that work is complete. So the spending there will not increase. We expect to spend, of this $138 million, we expect to have $100 million spent by the end of June and $120 million spent by the end of September. I wanted to just briefly talk about FEMA because there's obviously a lot of stuff going on with FEMA. As you know, DHS is at an impasse and has not been funded. We've not had FEMA here since February 22nd. So the good news, though, is before the shutdown, they had obligated $26.7 million of projects, obligated meaning they had reviewed them, they had audited them, they had approved them for payment to the city. We go through the state to get that payment processed, and fortunately through this week we've received about $9.6 million. Our net exposure at the end of March will be about $20 million in net exposure. That's what we've spent in excess of what we've been reimbursed to date. By the end of June, we expect to work that balance down to about $10 million. At the end of this, so the remaining public assistance eligible work will take another 3 to 6 months to complete. That is the FEMA eligible demo. That is the sidewalk repair, that are the trees and the stumps. At the end of that 6-month period, we will be in a position to wrap up the disaster. At that point, we will be able to collect for all of the costs that were incurred that don't get paid till the end. So we talked about donated resources earlier. The value of the donated resources at the city, including significant hours provided by Action, about $2.9 million that will offset the costs that the city has to incur. We will also get the grant management costs, of which 100% is eligible for reimbursement. That's another $2.1 million. and then the state match of 10%, which will be somewhere between $4 and $5 million. That is withheld to the end, so that's about $9 million that we'll get back at the end of the disaster. All in all, at the end, the estimate is that the city will be out of pocket about $4 to $6 million, which is pretty consistent with the initial appropriation that was made immediately following the disaster of $5 million. On the existing recovery office funding, as I mentioned earlier, we have sufficient funds through June. Additional funding package will be needed after that. Success for continued operations over the next few months, depending on a few things. One of those is HDC and the home repair funds that they have given. So in Missouri Senate Bill 1, they awarded $100 million for the Department of Public Safety for demo and debris removal and $25 million for home repair. Nonprofits and other entities are eligible to apply for these home repair funds. The city of St. Louis was awarded $1 million. As we consume those funds, we're eligible to apply for additional funds. To date, the state has awarded less than $5 million of the $25 million funds, so there's $20 million left to get. So now that we've got the infrastructure set up and we can execute on the home repair and consume funds, we'll be able to go back and apply for additional that $25 million grant. Next slide, please. In terms of look-ahead priorities, we are in process of mobilizing the recently awarded contracts for hazardous tree and stump removal, sidewalk repair. We will award a contract next week for the FEMA-eligible demo and debris removal. And then key is executing on the $10 million SB1 pilot and the $14 million home repair. And then securing additional funds for the next wave of demolition and repairs.
All right, well, with that, that's the conclusion of our broader presentation. I want to acknowledge that I know there's a lot of questions that may exist around the remaining set of dollars, so there are additional pages in the appendix. But with that, we'll turn it back over to the Board of Alder and go from there.
Yeah, you may want to say it. We're going to do it a little differently this time. But for anybody that did want to sign up that came in, I know some folks came in a little later in the room before we saw the presentation. But if anybody want to sign up to speak, we do have the sign-in sheet still up there, so please sign in. This time we are going to go to committee members just to ask questions. Hopefully some of those questions that committee members will have, we'll be able to maybe answer some questions that other people in the audience may have, but we want to just try something different to be able to get the questions on the front end so residents also that are here can be able to hear directly from questions from the committee members to the office to get those answers. So with that, I'll go in order, seniority, starting with Vice Chair Browning.
Perfect. And I am, if it's okay, going to ask my team to come up just so that as there's questions related to the sections. Ariane, chill out, my dude.
Thank you, Chair.
We got this, Ariane. We got you.
I'm gonna take a second to get my thoughts together, so I'm gonna pass to my colleagues.
Say it again.
I'm just taking a second to get my thoughts together, so I'm gonna pass for now.
Alderwoman Sanye.
Hello, good evening. I can just get straight into my questions. Thank you for sending the presentation in advance again. It was very helpful for me to have a chance to, just look through this and kind of digest it. I guess my first question begins on slide 7, where it talks about the launch demolition program and the goal of 250 to 275 houses to be complete by August. I was curious about, of those 250 to 275, how many are structurally condemned by the building division, and how many is there any data on how many were uninsured or underinsured?
Yeah, so these 250 to 275 are FEMA ineligible properties. So a lot of them, we don't condemn it until we get the formal approval for funding directly from the state for each set of homes. So we first get the funding, then we go and do the full structural condemnation process. So we have a set within this. Some of these properties are our own LRA properties. Those don't need formal condemnations from the building division because they're LRA owned. We can just take them down, assuming that they have structural issues. But the ones that are the remaining 150 or 100 or so that go through the state SB1 dollars, we're condemning those as we go. So many of those still need to be condemned as we work through that process.
So you want to get verification from the state whether or not it can fit within the debris demolition fund from them, and then the ones that they can't do, then you look at the city's fund for that.
Correct.
Okay, and is the 50K repair limit a part of the demolition or is that independent?
So no, demolition is totally separate from the repair.
And on slide 15, key learnings, many still learning about recovery programs. 41% of rental assistance applicants did not apply for FEMA. I was just wondering about some elaboration about what the disconnects there. Do you think it might be outreach? Is it education? Just 41%, obviously is not ideal. So just curious about some context your office might have there.
Yeah, so I'll share some, but then I'll let you elaborate. So one, we know that FEMA didn't show up in the same way it has in a ton of disasters. It didn't do door-to-door out and door knocking. We also know that this community doesn't always trust government. And so many of them may have thought they were ineligible support because they were a renter and they were qualified. It could be that many of them just didn't think that they would get support. And we know a lot of other folks just simply didn't think that it would be significant. So there's a lot of different variables that have driven that, but we've been focused on making sure our programs can support all. But I'll let Jennifer elaborate if there's anything. I know you've been looking a lot more at this.
Yeah, I would just say as we talk with our network partners about what they're seeing, it's those same things that folks thought it didn't apply to them. They were maybe in a non-traditional kind of lease. They were a renter. Their landlord said, I'm applying for my building, so they thought they couldn't apply. Or maybe they were in a household where there are multiple families and one family applied, but the others didn't. Well, there's a lot of reasons. Lack of trust of federal government, part of it.
I'm sorry. I don't know if you know it, but you're being a little disrespectful. If you could, everyone else is abiding and waiting. I know, but it's not time for you to ask questions. It's time for us to ask questions, and then there will be comment. I know you're frustrated, maybe by not having some of the answers, but it's disrespectful to those of us on the committee that have taken the time to ask these questions, and you will get an opportunity to speak. So if you could just, just a little decorum. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. There was a mention of the launched rapid repair RAP for 150 to 200 homes with the goal to be complete by October and work continuing to accelerate into April. Yep. Just curious about what the selection criteria was for those 150 to 200 homes.
Yeah, so the way kind of they was focused on, so we focused first on those with seniors and families, and so prioritizing those households first, and ideally those still living in those core structures. So that's the group that's being prioritized for the first 150.
So those that are occupied currently?
Yeah.
Okay.
And seniors and families.
Okay. And then it says that residents can still apply to STL Recovers, kind of believing that covers all programs. Is there any stage in the engagement or application process where there was a question asking if they apply for FEMA? I'm just curious, I know you're having multiple engagements with residents across dealing with them, so are they getting regular reminders at every stage that was reminding them of FEMA, or just kind of what is their direct interactions like? Because I know several of the folks who I've dealt with and kind of interacted with are just having several interactions as far as their connection to FEMA or some of those other programs that are not directly under it.
Yeah, so we're not directly looking at direct connections to FEMA, primarily because the FEMA program closed for new applicants. And so by the time we launched this in full scale, FEMA was at the initial locations where we started taking some of these applications, or at least VA was still supporting people who needed to do work with FEMA, but as of right now, there are no more. But as we look at some of the other programs of people for support, there are a lot of staff directly in the outreach center, so that when people go to maybe apply for private property assistance, They can meet with an IHN caseworker and get connected to other research and support as they need it, and they usually call the call center. So right now, we're still trying to get the systems to talk. They're all in very disparate systems, so we can't look at who's in the private property assistance program and who's in the and who is in, for example, enrolled in casework. But we do make sure that all the staff who are enrolled in those are getting the newsletters and resources that have all of them so that they know those exist. And then if you ever go to the outreach center, all those flyers for the different programs are there.
My next question, we kind of touched base a little bit previous, but I was just curious if you could talk to us about your selection process for local contractors.
Yeah, so with local contractors specifically for the repair program, the focus was a couple. One, to talk a little bit about why a company and why a construction management company outside of here. Is that disaster expertise moving through projects that's of this size, of this magnitude, with experience doing that quickly, but also the funding and bonding capacity to be able to front load the cost for programs like this isn't a common thing. And so we brought in a group who's done it before, who can ensure the programs go with speed. If you all remember correctly, we've had local folks trying to do the management, and that process doesn't move as quickly. These groups have experience doing it. They have the system set up. And so the goal is bringing the expertise to help do the project management, but have the work complete by local contractors. So to talk a little bit more about how the local contractors work, how we selected the initial group here, and how we're thinking about that as we move forward, is we started with the contractors that are already working with the Mission St. Louis, with the Kwame Group, that were already supporting a lot of local work. And then we've also, as we get more and more needing for contractors, we've been onto the contractor registry that we set up, and we'll start outreaching to those groups as we bring on additional capacity. And then anytime contractors have outreach to our office, we're starting to plug them in directly with them. We're starting to get a lot of that traffic the last week or two. I know you sent me someone asking those questions, so we're trying to set up a way for them to contact SLS directly to make sure that anyone who's interested in work can get brought system.
So you kind of started with the list of already approved contractors with the city that we have locally.
Yeah,
and then you're working on the infrastructure to bring new folks in, particularly for this work.
Yep, as we scale.
Okay. And it's on slide 18, Madam Clerk, it says 1,700 potential demolitions in tornado zone under review for public safety. I'm just curious, like, what does public safety mean here? What's that definable criteria like?
Yeah, so as we think about potential demolition, some of them may be buildings that you say aren't repairable, but they're not structurally unsound. They're not unsafe. There's no threat of an imminent collapse onto a sidewalk, onto a building nearby. So those are things that will need demolition. They're things that when you're in your neighborhood, you don't want that building there, but it's not public safety threat. So we recognize that we're not going to go take 1,700.
So things that are kind of at immediate risk of collapsing or falling apart.
Correct. And so that's the group that we focus on first. So we're trying to make sure we first take care of those and then move into.
On this slide 24, it says safe, sanitary, and functional up to 50K limit. I just wanted to verify, is there any work being done over that 50K limit? Are you just kind of pausing work that you review that will be over the 50K limit, or what happens to things that are over that?
So to things that are over that, Laura talked about that a little bit. We kind of have 3 different tiers. So if we go to the next page here, Madam Clerk. There's 3 different levels that we take. So first, if we can do it under 50K, we take it to safe, sanitary. If it can't within that for 50K, we take it to safe and sanitary. And then if it can't within that, we do exterior primarily only. So we're still staying within the 50K envelope with the goal of at minimum trying to preserve the structure, but ideally bring it to a place that's livable for the particular resident.
Thank you, and I promise I have 2 more questions, committee. On slide 27, it's third-party monitors. Are the third-party monitors already in place? And if they aren't, I'm just curious about what measures we have in place to kind of measure hazardous work as this is ongoing.
Yeah, that is in place, and it's in some ways staff augmentation to the building division, and in other ways it's an enhanced level of oversight that we've never had for demolition before. And so starting with the first use case, any demolition permit in the city typically has 4 to 5 inspection points throughout the life of that project, and whatever building inspector is assigned to that area is assigned to providing those inspection points. So as we look at scaling up the demolitions and thinking about that capacity during the building division, that wasn't going to be possible for us to just continue to provide in-house. And so we have a level of monitoring that's doing those permit inspection points. They're making sure that the water suppression is being used to keep dust down, that the water lines are properly capped or destroyed, the sewer line is properly capped, that being buried that shouldn't be buried, proper compaction of the backfill and grading and seeding straw, which are all things that building inspectors would typically be doing for a permit.
But
In addition to that,
the building inspectors that you mentioned, these are the same building inspectors, like kind of the ones that are usually assigned to our wards and neighborhoods?
yeah, the same building inspector that has to do all of your occupancy permits,
Okay.
building permits, also has to be able to jump aside anytime a building's being wrecked and provide oversight to them. And so that was not going to be possible at the scale of work that we're looking at. The additional layer, though, is ensuring that asbestos is properly segregated, remediated, and disposed of. And so the contractors themselves are required to have certified asbestos workers on site overseeing any waste segregation and disposal, and those monitors are ensuring that that work is happening properly and those materials are being wrapped in proper facilities.
And on slide 30, just updates on recovery office funding. It says clarity on federal and state funding reduced from 256 million to 186 million. I just wanted to get a breakdown and an explanation on this for myself and those of us on record.
Yeah, no, I'll talk about that. But one thing I just wanted to kind of highlight that we knew building inspections and we knew public safety tied to demolition was a problem before the tornado. And so the big reason for third-party monitoring is we something of this scale with the potential public health impacts, we wanted to ensure it was done right and in accordance to the laws and rules that were passed by both the Board of Alders, but also state and also our broader federal requirements. So that was the reason for the massive increase in monitoring support, but it is in collaboration with the building division. They're getting photos of various documentation and inspection points, and they're still exercising their authority on the areas where only they have the authority to do. So I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on that. But for the 256 to 186 million, many of you might remember that there were two different things that happened, different sequential events with broader funding. The state passed Senate Bill 1 for $100 million that was intended for the city of St. Louis tied to tornado recovery in the immediate few months after the tornado. In the November period, but I think we found out a little bit before that, but that's when we officially got the worksheet, the city was given a $156 million project for demolition efforts. FEMA gave $156 million to the state to exercise that broader project that was ultimately awarded. So we had been saying, take the 100 million that was there plus the 156 million, and that makes up the 256 million. When they went back into session, they passed a total of 100 million that was already passed and only an additional 86 million of spending authority. So that means, oh, sorry. Thank you, Alderman Devoti.
And just for the record, it was an ax because I couldn't hear you, Alderman. If slow down and do it again. I'm just make sure that people at home can hear.
Yeah. So there was the initial 100 million that was passed in Senate Bill 1 immediately after the tornado. There was another 156 million that came from FEMA in a dedicated FEMA project for private property debris removal that was awarded to the state to deliver. Our numbers had previously showed the 100 million plus the 156 million. As we've kind of had further conversations with the budget committee and how they've been planning for this in the governor's office, they've only given about 186 million in total spending authority tied to that project, where they're including any money toward the 156 million in it. So there is not an additional 156. It's a overlap, and that's why the number is now 186.
Okay, this is my very, very last question. It is slide 30.
I know it's confusing. I was confused too, and spent an hour with the budget.
I mean, I guess because that's up to the state on how they release the appropriations and what they, I think I do remember seeing that Senate bill and kind of following along and watching the budget a bit on that. For CDBG DR money for tornado recovery, did the city receive that?
No, so this is CDBGR dollars that were allocated from the flood that is still within CDA that has not been spent. There's an overlap between the tornado area and the flood area that allows us to use those funds in that area to include both that previously flood work as well as disaster recovery for this work. So that's the dollars that's being redeployed.
Thank you.
Alderman Devoti.
First, I want to apologize for being tardy. I'm sorry about that.
Apology accepted.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a handful of questions, and all of which are moving, or with the idea, looking forward, okay? So if you could keep that in mind. And Madam Clerk, if you could pull up page 18 of the presentation, just to help me, if not for anything else, kind of direct my inquiry. Okay, so what we're looking here, this is about when I walked in, so I apologize, but this essentially summarizes applications received by the Recovery Office from folks living in the zone who are requesting help, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this gives us the numbers with respect to demolition, the removal of debris only, and then a separate category of stabilization and repair, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, with respect to these three buckets, you were just describing for us very, very quickly certain funds that were made available either through the federal government, through FEMA, or the state of Missouri. If I understand, the non-overlapping funds amount to $186 million. Is that right?
The total, yep.
The total non-overlapping funds,
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
Okay. When we talk in terms of demolition applications received, have we accomplished that work? In other words, well, how far are we in taking down those 223 dwellings?
Yeah. So most of those 223 are actually eligible for the FEMA-oriented program. The state has not launched that program. So there has not been any movement on the FEMA-eligible programs until the state and FEMA launch their respective program.
So let me ask the question again. Out of those 223 applications, how many has the city of St. Louis acted on?
So Laura, do you have that exact number? I know we had a few emergency demolitions, but. Yeah.
Could you say that, Laura, you have to be on the mic.
I'd have to look, but I feel comfortable saying about 10 because they escalated to the point of an emergency situation and needed to be taken down. They were on the wait list for FEMA to review for eligibility and for the state to contract out the demolition. And in that time period, conditions worsened and we had to contract out an emergency.
And if I understand information Mr. Hill has given us in the past, that would be the type of work the city of St. Louis paid or advanced that we would expect to be compensated or reimbursed for through FEMA or the state of Missouri, right?
That is in some circumstances, yes.
In some circumstances?
Yes.
Okay. So out of those 223, we have demolished 10. I'm sorry. We've demolished 10. Okay. There was also some testimony about we expect to have sufficient funds through July. Does that statement apply at least with respect to the bucket of demolishing the 223 buildings subject to application?
So yes, assuming that we continue with the funding that we expect from FEMA, that program to launch, plus the dollars that we have from SB1.
Okay, and I understand, because you have said it many, many times, that from an accounting or a bookkeeping standpoint, that there is a lag between an issue is identified, an application or a contract is made, the work is done, and the money goes out the door, correct?
Correct.
Right, okay. So we all know that, but certainly, I think the representation as I hear of it, and we're looking forward, are we in agreement that there is sufficient funds available to the city of St. Louis to deal with the 223 demolition applications that we have in hand?
So I'll again say that's contingent assuming that the FEMA state project launches for the eligible funds that they have and the SB1 program we have, yes. But I do want to say we don't control the state FEMA program and that delivery, but under what we know and what we've been told is eligible under this FEMA program, yes.
Okay, so straighten me out. There are certain eligibility requirements for the FEMA program.
Correct.
Does the state funds, the $100 million, and I know there's some overlap, I get that, but do those funds capture whatever FEMA doesn't capture?
Yes, usually.
Okay, so those are, when we talk about that bucket of needs to get done, we can be fairly confident, as the Board of Aldermen is looking forward, that those 223 applications can be efficiently addressed and executed. Is that fair?
Yes, I think that's fair.
Okay, good. Okay, so then
I do want to acknowledge one thing, though. There's 1,700 demolitions that are necessary that are not represented in that 203.
Okay, but we don't have an application in hand
Correct.
with respect to those 1,700 potential demolitions, right?
That's correct.
Okay. From my perspective, and you brought it up, how are we handling those 1,700 potential demolitions in the zone?
Yeah, so right now what we're doing, and I think I talked about this a little bit earlier to address Alderman Sonier's question, is we're reviewing all of those buildings that need to come down in the tornado zone first with the lens of the immediate public safety threat. That's a building that's in an imminent concern of collapse. That's priority one. The second is we have started focusing on our core corridors, so our core streets, so that's Natural Bridge, Kings Highway, MLK, North Newstead, Taylor, the core groups, Natural Bridge, all throughout the tornado zone there as we then move into neighborhoods. After we move into neighborhoods, we'll focus on buildings that are next to adjacent occupied structures, and we'll continue to take down buildings in that triage order.
Okay, I don't mean to ask a silly question, but again, you're educating me. If the city identifies through an inspection a dwelling, a building that most probably needs to be demolished, but we don't have an application from the building or the parcel owner to deal with it,
Yes, we do.
what if anything, can we do?
We can. That's actually how we're taking down most of the buildings that are happening now. We do have the ability to do a structural condemnation within our code for any buildings that are unsafe that the commissioner has the ability to do. They can condemn that property, and then the city has the right to abate it.
And how many of those demolitions have we accomplished to date?
So I'll let Laura speak to that, but we've just ramped up the SB1 effort with 10 million, and I know we've done a bunch of emergency. Do you have the total count?
We've contracted 41 emergency demolitions to date. Most of those are complete. That includes the 10-ish that had to be escalated out of this pipeline and treated as emergency. And now that we have the $10 million agreement with the state for the SB1 funding, we are working through the backlog of the additional emergencies to be dealt with. And as you mentioned, that already started through inspections and application of condemnations. And I want to add that's a pretty laborious process on the front end of checking the code history of that property, of trying to find alternative mailing addresses for that owner, alternative phone numbers, trying everything we can to get that condemnation notice to the owner through that appeal period, and posting on the property.
I get that. In my practice, one of the issues comes up to title too. I understand there's notice. We have certain legacy properties where we've got title issues, so I understand that, and I get that. Is it fair to say that when we talk about demolitions, whether it's a demolition following an application or one that we're taking because of a public safety risk, that at the end of the day, we are confident that the city is going to be reimbursed either by the state of Missouri or FEMA for that work?
So I would say that answer is not a full yes. What we are confident are is that we'll have a path to make sure we can do all of those with existing funds that the city has available, which could be from FEMA, it could be from the state, and it could also be money from the building division that's allocated through general revenue to take down emergency demolition.
So as the Board of Aldermen is looking forward, and we are trying to decide what, if any, amount of money is allocated for the bucket of demolition, is there any particular ask from your office to accomplish that task? Or do you believe that that's a particular bucket that we can rely upon the state of Missouri and FEMA?
I think we'll have to have a hedge fund for the things that are inherently not going to be funded, and that's why we're going through the prioritization order with FEMA to understand full eligibility and understand what that potential gap might be.
How much of a hedge fund?
I'm not prepared to give that number in a public meeting.
Okay. So then let's talk about the next bucket, the debris-only bucket.
Yep.
With respect to those applications, how many has the Recovery Office acted upon? That 201.
So 201 is the number of applications that are left. I think You
that
can
is
walk
left.
through, and we've done about 152 private property debris removals thus far. How many of those are kind of left to complete? We're still sorting through. We don't get, it's run through our AmeriCorps partnership. All of them have been sent to our partners and are in the pipeline.
So, Ms. Jen, I apologize because you were talking when I walked in the room. You might have addressed that. But that 201 number are applications remaining, but in fact, we've addressed more than 100 of those to date?
We started providing debris removal services on private property before we even opened the private property assistance application. So there were already folks in the AmeriCorps system receiving those services. And only in the last about month have we made sure that we're adding to that AmeriCorps pipeline from the applications. They've been working through a backlog this whole time, AmeriCorps has. Now they're starting to transition to the applicants you see on the screen. So they've completed 152, and they are beginning to move through the 201. And I will add there are more than that, because that does not include the folks that are on the repair wait list that also need debris removal. There's a subset under stabilization and repair who also need debris removal support.
Okay. So let's talk about that debris removal issue, though. Do we have sufficient funds on hand through July to address the 201 debris-only applications that we are in receipt of?
We do, and AmeriCorps is working on a partnership with Slate to scale up their capacity in partnership with a Slate job training program.
Okay.
So we're able to grow the number of crews starting in April and through the summer.
So when all of us look at slide 18, it sounds like from a financial standpoint, a funding standpoint, we have under control the two buckets on the right, the issue with demolition as well as debris only. Or at least we have a pathway available to us to get those things done in an expeditious manner. Is that correct?
Yes. So if the question underneath it all, Alderman Devotee, is where the biggest gap and most funding from the Board of Aldermen will be to support the repair properties area, is going to be in stabilization area.
Oh, and you knew where I was going with, which is why I left the stabilization rate last. So we all knew where Matt was going with this. Okay. So we've got 2,760 applications. Ms. Jen, if I walked in again and I missed it, how many of those have we effectively dealt with as of today, as we're all sitting in this room?
So we have, sorry? 21, and that's been through the Healthy Home Repair Program that was previously set up. We have just started working through the new program, and those were the homes that Laura mentioned that have now been sent over to the contractor to start work.
And this is where we get into questioning of Alderwoman Sanye, where she was asking questions about the $50,000 ceiling. That ceiling, that $50,000, would apply to this stabilization and repair bucket of applications. Is that fair?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So I've got this fancy computer in my pocket like most of us do. I multiply 2,760 times 50,000, and we're looking at 138 million.
Yes, at the max. Yep.
Say that, I'm sorry.
Well, not quite. Prop Marion, calm down, please. So as we look at the stabilization and repair program specifically, one thing that we are doing now is there are a number of applicants that are not eligible. So not all 2,760 will be fully eligible within that pipeline. But that is the upside at the $50,000 cap.
That is, as some people might describe it, the worst case scenario.
Yes.
Okay. Interestingly, when we talk about all funding made available to date from the city, I think that number happens to be 138 million, if I read Mr. Hill's chart correctly. Is that right?
Correct.
Huh?
Correct.
Yes? Okay. And my understanding is out of that 138 million, all but 1.2 million has been allocated, essentially assigned to a particular contract, or it will be in the very near future. Is that right?
Yes, has been assigned. Yep.
Okay. Out of that 138 million, is there any path through either FEMA or the state of Missouri to recover any of that? In other words, the money's already out the door, or it's on its way out the door. But do we think we can recycle any of those funds? is there a possibility of getting any of it back from one source or another?
So all of the sources that are there, we have been already accounting for that revenue coming back. So there won't be additional dollars that can be put back. It will be things that were maybe taken out of, like right now we're running in. So Jim talked a little bit around how we have the 1103 that we've been using for reimbursable expenses. Those are dollars that are coming out of emergency city cash, so they're not, and they're being replaced as they come back. So it's not to say there's additional dollars sitting out there that can be recycled.
Well, if I'm hearing you right, and we think we're going to recover those funds, is there a need by the Board of Aldermen to take up a spending bill come May 1 to put more money or make more funds available for the recovery office?
Yes, that's correct. And that's what
Why? Tell us why. For what purposes then?
So a lot of the areas of the biggest gap are going to be in repair, and it's going to be ongoing support in our broader recovered residents around case management and support. So there'll be a lot in rapid repair and continued residents.
When we talk about case management, we're talking about the people cost then?
Correct.
Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. As you are here today, and I'll admit I'm not familiar with the chair's calendar and whether we're meeting next month or not. I apologize. But when we go back in session on May 1, has the recovery office identified a particular amount of money that it believes it needs to bring the stabilization and repair program home?
Yes.
What
So,
amount?
So we'll be sharing that more broadly. I'm not prepared to share that full amount, but the math you just did, Alderman, is the best math that you can do for things like the stabilization and repair. As we have learned more from the needs around case management, we're finalizing some numbers in there. But it is, if you wanted to meet the full scale need of repair, and we said the city was going to meet that full need, the 135, 150 million figure that you calculated is accurate. But if we think about the fact that there are other sources like MHDC at the state level, SB1, that does not mean that full need has to be met by the city, and those are the numbers we're trying to get a better clarity on.
Okay, and the other variable in that is in the 138 that we've allocated or contractor paid out, we think we're going to recover some of that from a source. As we sit here today, and maybe it's too early, but do we know how much or what percentage we think we might claw back in from either the feds or the state?
So you want to talk through the page on your... Yeah,
So it's slide 34. So of the exposure that exists today, it was about $30 million at the start of the month, but we've been reimbursed about almost $10 million in March. We're down to around $20 million. We think by the time that we're done with this, but again, these funds have to go back in to replenish the coffers. We will end up, the net out-of-pocket cost to the city will be $4 to $6 million.
4 to 6 million.
Between 4 and 6 million.
Okay.
So
Okay,
we will recover a large part of these funds.
Okay, so last questions before everybody here kills me, and I apologize. But when we talk about the human part of this, one of the things that has caught my attention, and I think it's the folks at 314 Oasis, I need to make sure I give correct credit due, is there has been talk about, oh my gosh, my mind just went, hubs, I believe. Oh my gosh. Hubs. You know, the idea that there are permanent places that are built within the zone, at least one, maybe as many as 3, that then are outfitted, that are built, they're staffed, they're outfitted, for the purpose of helping folks within the zone with the human toll of it as things move on. We haven't, if you talked about it, I missed it, and again, I apologize. Is there consideration by the recovery office with respect to the funding or the establishment of such a thing or something similar to that?
Yeah. Jennifer, do you want to talk about the resilience hubs that are operating and through, and then I can talk a little bit more around long-term concept of resilience centers.
Sure. So 314 Oasis and Westside Missionary Baptist Church are the hubs operating under contract with the United Way. They provide, as you know, a range of great services in the neighborhoods, helping people with their immediate needs, building a sense of community, creating connections there that help people get to their next step of recovery. And I think as cities think about this long term, it's also how do you build resilient hubs for disaster, for continued building that infrastructure to be able to cover. So I'll let Julian speak to that, but I do know that's on the minds of our service providers who do this every day.
So those are aspects I think long-term as the city needs to think about for future disaster preparedness, how you think about the concept of resilience centers and resilience hubs. Those have been set up in a number of cities. Right now, I'll be transparent, that is not the core focus of my office. Right now, we are focusing on the more immediate delivery, which is the demo program, repair program, and the immediate housing support needs for residents.
And I get that, but should it be one of our priorities that we need to be thinking about now? That is the funding of such centers. I mean, these needs exist today, correct?
Yeah, but I'd argue that transparently, there's a lot of needs that have always existed in North St. Louis that not provided, whether that has been enough qualified healthcare centers to provide healthcare in that area, whether there's enough on resilience centers, whether it's quality infrastructure. So I think, yes, that alongside a large number of needs need to be continued thought about by the Board of Aldermen and the city as we look at our residents.
I appreciate your patience, and thank you all for all of your work in answering our questions here today. Thank you.
Alderman Browning.
Thank you. One thing I love about my colleague is just how he builds a case. As always, I really appreciate the detail that you brought today. It's a monumental task to set up a recovery office, but then to also come to us every month and give us updates as we've requested and to constantly adapt. What I've seen from the recovery office is that it's always looking at itself and trying to figure out what needs improvement and how can we reach more people, how can we improve these programs, how can we make sure we expand eligibility if we're not catching the people we're trying to. You know, it's a very ongoing, constantly improving effort, and I see the change from month to month, and I'm appreciative of that effort. My colleague covered some really good questions. I want to focus a little more on the rental assistance side of things. Last time we were here, you had mentioned that there was an uptick in rental assistance applications. I'm seeing again that it looks like we still have increasing amount of rental assistance, so that number continues to climb at a steady rate? And what do you think is driving that rate? Is it that conditions are deteriorating, or that people are not able to find homes and so they're still looking month after month, or what is driving those numbers?
Yeah, and I'll let Jennifer talk more about this, but one, we know more people, once someone gets rental assistance, people talk. And so we do know that simply talking about the programs, knowing you applied to FEMA and didn't get it, and it was a pain to get, but then finding out someone who was successful at the program has certainly been driving applications alongside events. But I'll let Jennifer speak to if there's other things that you've seen for how people are applying.
I think in addition to that, as we've embedded our community health workers and disaster case managers in the resilience hubs, that we're catching people in neighborhoods rather than waiting for them to come. So we're, I think, through our outreach efforts, finding more.
That's good to hear. And I guess we should be encouraged if the numbers start going down, because maybe that means we're meeting our need. But so you also talked about winter operations. This is another aspect of like this constantly changing picture, that we have a different problem to tackle depending on the weather. Yep. So we said we're winding down winter operations. It was a beautiful day today. I think we have a little cold weather in the future, but not too much. And so those are winding down. Overall, how would you say our winter operations went this year, considering it was the first winter after the tornado?
Yeah, I would say overall, from our perspective, successful, right? Our primary goal was to keep people safe during this winter. For anyone who came into broader programs, we did not have a day where there was not open shelter beds from our Code Blue activation, or people who were eligible within our groups, especially families, children, and seniors or disabilities who were not accepted into our hoteling program. And then we have successfully, as we mentioned, transferred anyone who was interested in the safe housing available options available that moved into it. So from our standpoint, it was a massive success. But we recognize, though, that that does not mean it felt that way for the people who were in it, because for many of them, success was staying in their home. But for our metrics of safety, extremely successful.
That's certainly good to hear. I think just from my perspective, it appeared that we were getting people in hotels and places that they could stay warm. I also think it's just important to hear the people aspect of it. At the end of the day, we're talking about demolition and stabilization and home repair, but keeping the mission centered on what this is really about, which is people. Home repair means a roof over someone's head. Demolition means removing a hazard that might be dangerous to a person. If there's a pile of debris somewhere that's not really going to hurt someone or causing a problem for someone, it's got to be less of a priority than a pile of debris that's going to maybe actively fall on someone's house. So that's what I'm noticing through a lot of the prioritization of this office, is that we continue to be focused on that mission. And then this aspect of stay or return, that central mission that's grounding the office, which is to say that we want to make sure that as we're recovering from this tornado, it is a focus on also recovering the parts of our city that have been disinvested, neglected, that we're dealing with more than just a natural disaster in some of these situations, but what we want to do is build these neighborhoods back for ability. And so I think a lot of the careful work we're doing here to make sure that we're prioritizing properties that are occupied, prioritizing buildings that are dangerous, again, it's all part of that story of trying to make sure that we're focusing on the people of North St. Louis. I am curious about demos. Can you share a little bit more about what is being prioritized for demo and why that's being prioritized?
Yeah, so talking a little bit about kind of priorities for demos. So first, it's the emergency demolitions. These are buildings in imminent nature of collapse that have a threat to an occupied adjacent structure or public right-of-way. So in short, making sure that there's kids running by a house next door that live next door, the house isn't going to be in danger of falling on a kid or someone walking down the side. The second priority after that is focusing on our core corridors. Part of that is because those are the entryways to community. You drive in and out of a community every day and see every day, and so getting that cleared was a top priority as the second. The third is, as we move into neighborhoods, we're going to start prioritizing neighborhoods, and that'll be prioritized by density. Really focusing on if there are 10 homes and people living on a block and 2 homes that need demolished, that has a lot better impact on the residents there than a home that has 1 person living in that block and 3 homes or 2 homes that need destroyed. So we're going to be focused, because we have to, on a ruthless prioritization to those that can have the highest impact on the most number of people as we move through this effort.
On flipping back for a second to getting people in homes, the impacted tenants fund, it looks like we're still seeing an increase there too. And how are we doing money-wise with the resources available in that?
Yeah, so right now you can see that it has 191,000 approved. There's over $1 million in that fund, so we're not at all worried at the moment around that fund running.
So we're in good shape there, thanks to some of the efforts of our colleagues here to get money to that fund, and I think the collaborative effort between the mayor's office, the recovery office, and the Board of Aldermen has continued to make sure that people have that resource available. I was also encouraged to see that with rental assistance recipients that people are relocating, but a lot of people are relocating within their communities. That's also very encouraging to see. We need long-time residents to stay where they are, to continue to stabilize their communities, and we want to see them also benefit from the comeback of that community. So while we want to make sure they have a home and a safe roof over their head, I think whenever we're able to keep people in their communities where they may have family or they may have friends or other resources, they're probably better in a better position to recover if they can stay near those resources. I want to return to the number of demos. I apologize for jumping around here. I've just so much information and a lot of notes here. So I think my colleague Alderman Devotee really got into it, but I wanted to zero in on to this idea that there are 1,700 potential demos for review just for public safety reasons, that about 500 of those are owned by the LRA. Are those LRA properties being prioritized because they're just easier to take care of, or is it not a priority because those aren't necessary? Well, I shouldn't say they're not. They could be a priority if they're in a dangerous situation. But can you speak to that?
Yeah, so one, I want to summarize that 1,700 are potential demolition. This means someone has identified from a right-of-way survey a potential that it may need a demolition. So I want to be clear, that doesn't mean we think all of them have to come down. Some of them may be savable. It's just an estimate, and we leaned a little bit heavier on assuming it's a demo just so that we can make sure that we are ensuring safety. We still have to figure out how many of those exactly eligible for that program. To your question about LRA, so LRA is being primarily prioritized because there is a specific set of funds already allocated specifically for LRA property out of a DED ARPA, so American Rescue Plan Act program with the state that was given to the St. Louis Regional Crime Commission and given to SLDC LRA to do demolition. So we have reprioritized, working with SLDC, a large chunk of those dollars into the tornado zone to take down unsafe LRA structures. And so that's why those are being prioritized, because we have the dollars and we have to spend them down by August.
That's helpful. And I think I'll take this moment to acknowledge that I've seen this a lot by the office, where we're finding other sources of money that are available that can be applied to this problem, like how you mentioned the flood money from 2022, I think, and that is actually able to be used for some things now. I think that kind of resourcefulness is necessary because we do have an enormous need. What I'm observing, what has been said multiple times tonight, is that there are the applications that people have submitted, and then there are the other properties that have not applied. Could you speak to what you think is going on with the properties that we haven't received an application from? Are they vacant? Are they out-of-town owners? What's the issue?
So I think Laura mentioned it. Only about 100 properties that do not have applications were occupied pre-tornado that we think are throughout that particular aspect of the program. And so what is happening, so if we take a couple examples of properties that we're taking down, like the one we just took down last week, that was in Academy Sherman, and a woman who lived out there. That is a property that has been a problem property in that area for the last 4 to 5 years. That owner lives in Vancouver, has not taken care of that property. Their next door neighbor, June, and the respective groups have been mowing that property for years, and it got damaged by the tornado to the point that was being taken down. So that is the state of a lot of ours, are examples like that. The ones we're taking down this upcoming week off of Kings Highway have long been vacant properties as well. So we do have, and are seeing that most of our demolitions are not an issue of occupied structures, but they're a vacancy problem that's existed in North St. Louis for a while, many of which may have been buildings that needed demolished before the tornado. The tornado has only exacerbated.
And the city's taken efforts recently to try to handle some of these vacant properties. We passed a series of bills that were enabled by a charter change that we made last year that allows us to put fines and fees onto a special tax bill that should help move it much faster than waiting for them to fall behind on their taxes, because vacancy is the problem that I think this city has in so many ways. It's not just the lack of people in those buildings, but also then when a structure goes vacant, the problems that brings along with it, both unproductive and taking away from our resources. So I saw this number about 1,200 privately owned buildings, 200 that applied, about 1,000 who didn't apply. What's the long-term solution? Like, what's the long-term plan for these, 1,000 or so vacant structures that are in bad shape and may need demolition?
Yeah. So the path right now is for us to, I think from us as a city, is we have to be prepared to remove demo and debris from these neighborhoods. These are properties that have been complaining to the city for years about vacancy or issues with their property, and we have to be building a long-term plan to do that. So like we mentioned, the short term, we're going to prioritize with the resources that we have, those that are first. But you can kind of see from a recovery standpoint, if we want neighborhoods to recover, if we want people to believe their neighborhood has a future, they first need to see the debris and the blight removed. And so our goal is to figure out a path to remove all of it, or at least to make the case for what it's going to take to do so, and to continue to fight for the resources to do exactly that.
That's helpful. I think that's what we were looking at when we're talking about the recovery of North City versus the recovery from the tornado, is addressing those vacant properties. I think the last couple of things here, what I heard again multiple times is that we're relying on state and federal partners to release funds to us. And I find this model to be kind of cynical, but it seems like we're not being trusted with the money. And so we're getting to a point where they're just holding the money that we could maybe be using today, but they're only going to release it if we spend the money first and then apply for reimbursement. Kind of like your parents would, like, make sure you actually went and spent all the money you had before they give you more, like that. That to me feels unproductive when we got like emergencies on our hands. Yeah. How are we expecting that to go as planned with the state? Do we feel that they're going to be releasing that money in a way as we need to?
Yeah, so I'll talk about a few things for why that's developed that way. One is we didn't know what FEMA would pay for, and we just got clarity of that in February. And now that we have gotten clarity of that, we had already started on the contract for the $10 million to get the broader demolition effort started. As we have gotten more clear on what FEMA's funds, we're in discussions about their tranche around that, but don't have any secured things. So we just got the contract for the initial $10 million about 2 weeks ago, and we were taking down buildings with that $10 million a week and a half later. So we are moving as quickly as we can on the city side as soon as resources are made available. This $10 million will get us through demolitions for the next couple of months, and then we'll have to be talking about more funds before it starts to slow down our operations. And that's the
do
goal.
We feel that we have the contractor capacity to do that as well?
So we have set up the contracts and the right supports that if we do not have it locally, we have a path to bringing in out-of-state contractors to augment our capacity. So we'll first always exhaust our local capacity and our local resources, but we have built a path, which is the value of also bringing in outside experts, is they can bring in that outside capacity to support local capacity as well. So we are confident that if the funds are there, we will figure out a way to bring in the capacity for contractors to deliver the work.
It's just another mountain that's been moved in this process, because I know that we're looking at American Rescue Plan Act dollars right now and observing how it's been very difficult to spend the amount of money that the city got quickly by the deadline that we're required to spend it by. And so, I often say it would have been more helpful if the federal government had sent us 1,000 workers instead of a bunch of money, because what we're really lacking for is workers and people to do this stuff. But you've even ramped that up and reached out to outside sources. And so that's going to be crucial in making tangible, visible progress as we move forward. I think it's clear we have a problem bigger than we have resources to address. And so I want to emphasize this. It cannot just be the city that responds to this disaster. We will not be able to help everyone if it's just the city. And we already see that with the $50,000 cap, where if that were higher, we'd be helping fewer people. And yet, if we're doing the math, it's reaching the limits of the money we have if we were to just give all the people who have applied that $50,000. So it cannot just be the city, and that's why I appreciate that this office is checking under couch cushions in a figurative sense, right? To find any money that we can to get towards the disaster, and making sure that we, use reimbursable funds, that we're properly documenting all these things, that we're ensuring compliance so that none of this, doesn't get reimbursed or that any of this money gets pulled back. I've talked about this before, but when government spends money, it's not as easy as when any just individual goes out and spends money. There's all these rules that we have to apply for, and it's supposed to be protect that money because it's taxpayer money. But that does really gum up the works when we're responding to a disaster. And so, again, I just think that the resourcefulness and the creativity of this office has been interesting to watch, and I appreciate the work that you're all doing as we continue to try to help the people of our city.
Thank you, Alderman. I'll keep mine kind of quick so the public can be able to jump in. I think everybody, I always go on last. Everyone say all the hard hitting answers or questions to get the answers. But I do want to jump straight in because I think Alderman Devotie was onto something good, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. Going back to page 18 about the stabilization and repairs, those are just like application, but it sounds like in the back and forth, you and the alderman mentioned like a number that would be needed to do the stabilization and repairs. And when we talk about recovering from this tornado, we're talking about making sure that people can live in their homes. The ones that we can repair and do is everything possible from the city. And did I guess, hear you correctly that that roughly is about 138 million that would take to just do stabilization and repairs?
Yep, that's the max. If we did 50,000 for every applicant here.
And that's, the max is 50,000, but the cost, I think Alderwoman Saunier brought this up previous meetings ago, or maybe in the ARPA, that it probably will cost more than 50 million.
Much more, yes.
Much more. So if we just stick with, I guess, that number of a 50, 100, or 138 at the cap being 50 million, or the cap being 50,000, is that, and I don't want to get lost, I think, in the back and forth with you and Alderman Devotie, out of that, if we were to use, let's just say, a new Rams bill comes May 1st, and there's, I don't, 140 million appropriated for Northside. Is that money, I guess, reimbursable for like the stabilization if you guys will use that money for stabilization? Because I know there's been some back and forth about it's
No repair dollars are reimbursable from FEMA. So those would be direct dollars from the city that would be expended, and we would not be able to reimburse those dollars.
Gotcha. So to be able to do that, will FEMA be able to use money from the city to do that repair work?
So
I mean, like, would FEMA give us funds to do that type of work?
FEMA does not have a rapid repair program, and have already denied us on the rapid repair program they used to have. They shut down that program.
And then the state is only giving the city money to do demo or debris, correct?
At the moment, yes. Outside of our MHDC program that Jim talked a little bit about, where we have $1 million and we have the ability to apply for more as we complete work.
But outside of the state and outside of FEMA, there's, if I'm hearing you correct, there's no fund to do the stabilization and home repair.
So it's state dollars, yes, and city dollars. That's correct.
And how much is that from the state dollars?
Sorry. So it depends on what the state's willing to kind of give to it. So as I mentioned, they have a $25 million fund for home repair. Right now, we have about access to about $1 million of that. About $5 million of that has been allocated. And so it is up to the state on how much additional they'll allocate as we move through the work. And so that's a number that's to be decided. But we'll know more on the upcoming months as we continue to spend down on this program.
Gotcha. And how does that process work between the Office of Recovery and the state of them? Do they like send you a text saying, hey, we're about to send you some money? Not like, how do that process work?
So we applied. It's a grant program that nonprofits, governments, anyone impacted by in the state of Missouri for disaster applies for the program. The state MHDC organization, which is one that administers the funds, similar to how CDA might get a grant, decides how much an applicant gets.
So that 25, then that 25, I'm sorry to cut you off, I don't get you. So that 25 million that I think you keep mentioning from MSD or whatever. MHDC, that's not necessarily for the whole city of St. Louis.
It's for all disasters across Missouri. But we have been the lion's share of applicants to those funds to date. We have made up 70 to 80% of the applicants for those funds and recipients of those funds. And so as we continue to expand, we can continue to grow the amount of funds that come in.
I mean, do you think
that is not a commitment?
Yeah, I was going to say, so do you think we'll get that, since we're the main, we're the A team to get those funds, do you see us getting like 80% of that 25?
Well, what I will say is you can count that I and Rep. Kimberly Ann Collins, as state rep from this area, are consistently in conversations trying to advocate to get as much of that as we can to the city of St. Louis that's not spent.
And we shouldn't turn down any dollars at all, especially, anytime Jefferson City want to give St. Louis anything, we better try to get it. But is it fair to say that it's not guaranteed compared to like Rams funding money that is like guaranteed funds that actually help with the stabilization of home repair?
Of course. Any authority that comes directly from the city.
Gotcha. A couple questions. I think, when we was talking about air demos and air monitoring, like third parties, are the third parties doing, well, this is a question, are they putting out like air monitoring like systems in place, knowing that a lot of homes in like Northside may have asbestos and other stuff? Is there, and I believe the wet demo is happening, but like are air monitors being put in place to know what is out in the air?
So we are working on a third-party partnership to do air monitoring, but our for compliance right now. But we are working to set something up. It won't be by house or by area, but we are working on a partnership to test the broader air.
Out of the 10 homes that was demo, was there any testing done?
So we do the testing required as in our partnership with by law, by Missouri DNR and EPA for standards that inform demolition, but there is not ongoing testing for the one we have launched.
So when we did the 10 homes, what was, I guess, the process in that, like making sure that the air was good?
So first, it starts with pre-wetting. So 10 to 14 hours before wrecking starts, the contractor has to soak the entire structure. It's called a wet demo, and it's not just spraying the outside. They have to make sure water is getting inside and soaking the interior as well, even if that means kind of chopping a hole in the roof, if you will. So prior to wrecking, the home has to be soaked so that water gets saturated and reduces dust when wrecking begins. Then during any and all wrecking materials where dust might be generated, water suppression is required, and that's what our monitors are doing on the ground, is ensuring that that water suppression, that dust suppression is being used properly, changing with wind conditions. They tell them to move their sprayers and hoses as needed to keep that dust down. And then they're also ensuring the proper segregation and disposal of asbestos. None of that is equipment-based. And so to Julian's point, we're working on a larger partnership to put real-time air quality monitors throughout the tornado-impacted areas so we can track in real time. There are no real-time air monitors that measure asbestos. You can measure particulate matter to change your operational behavior, but there's nothing that can do a real-time, like asbestos in the air machinery.
So EPA wouldn't have something like that? I remember when there was something that caught fire on Cass, a Paul McKee property, the big mansion, and folks thought that there was asbestos. EPA came in and put in like testing monitors to make sure asbestos wasn't in the air.
Yeah, and we did some of that in the original debris removal phase, where a lot of debris was being picked up and hauled out. We had air testing on site with a partnership with EPA and MDNR, but we had to wait 24 hours for those test results to come back. So it can't influence your behavior on the spot. It just tells you how you're doing overall.
Okay, and I got.
But yeah, I just want to kind of summarize. We are taking all safety precautions to ensure safety within these, if it's not apparent from the increase in third-party monitoring and things that transparently have not been happening in this city for demolitions in North St. Louis or South St. Louis for a long time. We are doing the proper work to ensure that all protocol and all tests are done. And as we mentioned, we're working to set up a third-party partnership to add those additional protections to test the air quality as we move through scale demolition.
Okay, and as y'all mentioned, skill up work far as home repair, demo, all of that. And I think maybe you kind of hit it, but I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. Is there an impacted zone that the team is focusing on? And we know the tornado hit, several wards and several neighborhoods, but is there like a direct zone that the team is focusing on when they're looking at demos or they're looking at stabilization?
So we're looking at the initial executive order 90 neighborhoods from the executive order from Mayor Spencer, which defined the major areas of the tornado zone. That is where we did all of the windshield assessments as driving by is in the hardest hit neighborhoods, which are primarily Fountain Park, Lewis Place, Academy, Sherman, and then continuing to go upville, Greaterville, Kingsway East was hardest hit, as well as O'Fallon, Penrose, College Hill, and Fairground. We also went a little bit further out where we know that initial area was and where we had initial reported damage to try to get a full view of the scale. But most of the demolition damage, most of the emergency demolitions are in that direct path.
Gotcha. When you guys do, out of the 10 demos that was recently done, 10-ish, was there a cost? And the reason I'm asking, is there a cap on demolition for a person's home, knowing that each structure is, different, or a structure may be bigger than the other? Is there a cap on this may cost too much to demo?
So most of this, like we said, is funded from a state perspective, and most of it is focused on emergency. So if there is an emergency demolition that has to happen, that has a public safety threat, no. So the state does not have a cap on the program, and certainly the size of the property influences the overall price.
Okay. And my last question, I want to get to the Impact Tenants Fund. It says 392 applications received, 141 applicants approved. Can you talk about why the 247, when you say incomplete applications, what does that mean? And was there any work to make sure that those applications were complete?
Absolutely. We're working through the Partner of Employment Connections, and they look at all the reasons that they're incomplete, what's not provided, and they do a lot of outreach to try to help people to get that. So there is an online application, so people can just go on and apply, and their application counts, but they may get through it and realize they don't qualify. The only reason they're denied is if they were in the county or they weren't a renter. So they're staying in that pool of incomplete application until we try to close it out.
So they wouldn't be denied if they lived in the city. I know some of the languages would be tailored to Tornado, but it's not just only for Tornado, it's for all city-wide. Okay. I'll save anything else I may have to the end. If anybody, again, that wants to speak, we got a sign-in sheet up front to be able to sign in and speak. With that, we will head with our first person. And when you come up, just say your first and last name, the ward you reside in. And we'll have 3 minutes as well. And Madam Clerk will call you up. I will hope the legendary, iconic, I think Jamala Rogers is first. If she wasn't, she first today.
Thank you. Yes, I am Jamala Rogers. I am a PFV in the 13th Ward, and PFV is my name for Proud Frequent Voter. And I will be voting on April 7th to retain the earnings tax. So I'm here. As you know, I'm one of the architects for the state and local legislation that led to the return of local control for the City of St. Louis Police Department, along with the establishment of an independent civilian oversight, as well as the creation of the current city's oversight office. As you probably also know, I am the privileged plaintiff in the people's lawsuit against the hostile takeover of the state of our police department. I'm here because I wanted to hear the recovery report, but I also heard that there may be some takeover of funds by the police department, including the Rams money. So I want to make sure my voice gets heard on that. So I want to acknowledge two trends in the country, two national trends. One is the challenge of recruitment by police departments across the country, because it's not just about a competitive salary. I know some potential recruits that would rather work at a fast food than work for the police department. And this is because that profession has been tainted over the years because of its racist and corrupt behavior that has consistently been justified. And so the occupation of our communities to control and terrorize is not something that's open and attractive to folks who might want to be looking for a new career. That image is not likely to change in the near future, particularly under the current dictator that we have in the White House. The next trend is more positive and hopeful, and that is the historic decreases in crime across the nation, particularly homicides. So I want to tell a tale of two cities, one being St. Louis, Missouri, and the other one being Newark, New Jersey. St. Louis approximately has a little under 300,000 now. We are now listed as one of the cities in America that has the most severe population, and it's not because of crime. We had last year 240 homicides. That is a decrease for sure, and we need to celebrate that. But if I tell you that in Newark, New Jersey, who has just a little bit more in terms of population than us, they had, wait for it, 31 homicides in 2025. This is not about some kind of magical formula. This is about visionary leadership in the city that took the responsibility of making it welcoming to all of the citizens of that city, the most marginalized, the most disenfranchised, the most criminalized. And so you have roughly the same population with less police, but guess what I saw as a determining factor? In St. Louis, our Office of Violence Prevention has about a 2.6 million budget. In Newark, New Jersey, the Office of Violence Prevention, which is modeled a lot like ours, except the total name of it is the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, because they understand that it's trauma in these communities. It's not just violence. The violence is perpetuating trauma, and the trauma perpetuates the violence. Their budget is $15 million a year, almost 5 times that of this city. So when we start to look at what is the rationale as to why this city looks like it does, why people think like they do, why people act like they do, it's because of the investment or the disinvestment. And we heard a lot about where the money is, and I hear the little thing going off, and I'm about to close up. But when I think about where we might go with the decreasing funds in this city and with the increasing needs of the city, something is going to give. And I'm thinking about this going to be a long, hot summer because a bunch of the trees are down. That gave us some shade. People going to be broke because of the economy. This is not going to be a good situation for St. Louis. So I just want to make sure that the demands that we're going to put on the city by the police department, that's going to be to the detriment of the whole entire city, that we need to really begin thinking about who really has a vested interest in the political, economic, cultural, and social welfare of this city. And it's the people in this room and not the people who want to live outside the city but want to extract from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next online, we have,
Also, if I forgot, but I'm doing that. Everybody that's here to speak, if you can raise your right hand, and everybody that's online, and the legendary, we already know Jamal is always telling the truth, so you ain't got to raise your hand. And then the people online, if you can turn your screen on, we're going to just swear everybody in. I see 1. I see 2. Okay, everyone, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. All righty. First person online is Madam Clerk. You can call them. And for the folks, again, just say your first name, last name, and the ward you reside in, and you have 3 minutes afterward.
Ms. Casey Fowler Finn.
Hi, thank you. 6th Ward. Over the last 10 months, I've heard a lot of stories from impacted residents who have so much pride in their homes, neighborhoods, and city, and they're losing hope, and it's the city's fault. My alderperson can't even show up to these meetings. You all just keep admitting you're not moving fast enough. The only person that makes feel better is you. It does nothing to help impacted residents, and it doesn't excuse you for not doing what's right. Nor does it excuse you from the fact that without a doubt, we would not be here if impacted areas were primarily white. So shame on you and shame on the city. I had a conversation with my 4- and 7-year-old the other night about the ongoing devastation from the tornado. My 4-year-old immediately said, they need food and water and toys. Let's go get our money and go buy them what we need. Can we do this tomorrow? And then she asked me to start a list of items people would need. And I have that list here. This is the paper she chose. And she and my older daughter said food, toys, shoes and socks, Band-Aids, milk and water, scissors and paper so they can make things, doctors, windows, pets, and company. My kids were devastated to learn that the schools were still closed and added teachers, school and school clothes, friends at school. And then I asked them if they thought the people of North City should be paying for this themselves. My 4-year-old emphatically said, no, they need help because they don't have money. The tornado struck their money. Then my 7-year-old said the most insightful thing of all, they need people to count on. Right now, they don't. How is it that young kids know exactly what needs to be done, but you all do not? When did you lose your empathy and what's right? A 4- and 7-year-old are ready to spring to action and spend their parents' money and know in their hearts that impacted residents need people to count on. But your actions demonstrate that you do not. This is 10 months later. And a thriving St. Louis depends on all of our city thriving, and the recovery of North City will dictate St. Louis's future. So if you don't want to help because it is the right thing to do, or that you're obligated to as representatives of the people, then at least do it because it's economically smart. Divert all funds from all city projects and all of the Rams money to North City. And please next time hold these meetings in North City so impacted residents can attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Angel Flores.
Good evening. Sorry about that. My name is Angel Flores. I am from Ward 2, and I'm a coordinator of the Through on 4 Oasis, a trauma response organization which provides immediate tornado recovery efforts in North St. Louis. We urge you to grant the RAM settlement money straight to the hands of the people of North St. Louis, who have led and continue to make the tornado recovery work they need to survive. This is justice for those who have done so much with so little help. For decades, the city and county governments intentionally isolated North St. Louis in the name of white supremacy through systemic loss of segregated housing, education, and financial disinvestment. To give the Rams settlement money to the rebuilding of North St. Louis is not injustice against the rest of the city. It is delayed justice for the descendants of the communities mostly affected by historical injustice in the city. The tornado has only deepened the housing crisis it already existed. Our neighbors are living in tents, overcrowded homes, hotels they cannot afford, and below bridges. We see this at the Oasis every day. This is unacceptable. It was a century ago, and it is now. To solve this emergency housing crisis in North St. Louis, we need a clear housing plan that centers property owners and renters. A plan that doesn't exist yet and that we ask you to complete. Recovery must include both immediate housing solutions and long-term investment. What we hear on this meeting is that money for demolition is secured, but money for rebuilding 2,700 houses is conditional. Yes to demolition, maybe to rebuilding. This is the message currently shared by the STL Recovery Office. This is unacceptable. Again, we demand three things. Deliver the RAM settlement money funds straight to the people of North St. Louis. Prioritize a housing plan that centers property owners and renters, and guarantee the rebuilding of homes, not just its demolition. The people know what they need. Give them the money to access what they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Next, we have Cynthia Jordan.
Thank you so much, Ms. Clerk and Mr. Chairman. My name is Cynthia Jordan, and I live in the city of Creve Coeur here in St. Louis County, but I'm a native of St. Louis, and so I am here to support the city of St. Louis and to just simply say that, you know, I'm hoping that we can come together as a region to really put our best foot forward in terms of planning, expertise, leadership, capacity building, etc. So I'm delighted to say that we've been able to connect with an expert, international renowned expert, Dr. Robert Hawkins, with the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Thanks so much to my alma mater, St. Louis University, specifically Dr. Jesse Helton. And so we're in the process of putting together a regional advisory committee to work with Dr. Hawkins. And our goal is to have Dr. Hawkins with us next month. I've already talked to Kayla Reed, who I have so much respect and regard for at Action St. Louis, because we want to use their facility along with Arch City Defenders. And the goal really is, again, like I said, to do regional planning to do three specific things. First one is immediate need to help the residents of North St. Louis City. Secondly, intermediate need. And then lastly, long-term need, because this is going to be a long-term process. We've already wasted, I hate to say that, 10 months. And so it's just finally time for us to come together as a region. I am a banker by profession, and I'm putting everything that I have, God knows, in terms of my influence, my relationships, reputation, everything, so we can get North St. Louis City whole. We have failed these people so much, and it's time for us to either put up or shut up. And I know that we're more than capable of doing what we need to do. So it's time to come together. And if you like to connect, to be part of this, I am there on LinkedIn. Cynthia Jordan, I am a banker by profession. And Mr. Chair, that is all the time I have, and I'll yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan.
Next, we have Gwen Cockshell.
Hi, my name is Gwendolyn Cockshell from the 10th Ward. I don't know where to start. You all answered most of my questions, but to give a little insight, I lived in the 10th Ward for 65 years. You know, we moved here from the South. I couldn't get a loan for my house, and I'm 6 blocks from $1 Million home, because I don't want people to think that people in North St. Louis wasn't taking care of their properties. I'm a vet. I couldn't get that loan. We live in, everybody on our block had fireplaces, marble fireplaces, 3-story homes, real nice homes. But we couldn't, we was redlined. I fought with Wells Fargo in restitution. They end up giving us money in in 2018. But I just want you to know, that's why I couldn't. If it wasn't for Darlene Green's program, what she did recoup the money back. She offered a small interest rate loan that I ended up getting a new furnace, and that's how I was able to get it. I wouldn't have been able to get it. But I think you all are writing a check you can't cash. When we first came over this tornado, everybody was, oh, we're going to take care of you. We're going to get you this money. See, now you got people thinking they're going to get this money. $50,000 in a cap. You know, people are a little delusional, because I'm looking at people with 600 people there at O'Fallon Park, because it's steady people, because you still got the application over. You still getting applications. I come down Natural Bridge, people still going in there trying to fill out application. If it's a deadline, it shouldn't have been a deadline, because you said it was like 7,200 people affected and only 27 homes. You know, people actually diligence in reaching out to people. And the reason that the rental is going up is because the people been in the rental since May the 16th. And it should have been like me, myself, and I lucked up on filing for the STL St. Louis, because I went down there on the last day to file for FEMA on December the 22nd, and somebody had asked me to sign up for it. I don't think, because I was privy to information, and then people I knew that didn't even know about it signed up in January and February, who homes don't have a roof on it. My home has a roof on it. And I feel like that it should have been not first come, first serve, but it should have been priority. I heard the lady say that they finna order tarps. Tarps? Tarps, it should be roofs going on them homes, and they should be coming before I get any services. When you got people over there in the Ville where they lost 5 people, the 5 people that was killed was in the Ville, and when I went over there, you got all these 2-family flats, 4-family units. They need to be repaired if they can come up under that umbrella. But I think that if you all get them any more money, I think you should earmark it, and I think you should pay more attention to how this money being spent, because we're a year out and you talking about tarps. Them people that you got on the tarp list, you need to be putting the roof on their house before anybody else gets served. That's the priority to preserve. I stayed in my house for 6 months with mold because I'm fighting the insurance company. I signed up for STL. I didn't tell you I needed no 50,000. I told you I need electrical, because the insurance company, when the walls came down, It was knob and tooth, and they said they weren't gonna give me the money. I'm still fighting them. I didn't ask for anything else. You didn't order it. You got all these people with these cameras. I don't know how much you're paying for them. These people coming from out of town. I don't know how much you're paying for them. They stand in my house for 4 hours. You got them 8 hours in some people's house. How much you paying for that? And they don't even need all of that. It wouldn't even need it for that. We don't have enough contractors. I got 12 cards from just walking around my neighborhood and seeing these people doing great jobs. You need more contractors. You need more qualified contractors, and they all over the city. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coxiel. Next, we have Melanie Marie.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, first I want to name, I'm Melanie Marie, I'm People's Response Organizer with Action St. Louis. I just added this, but I want to name first that although this is probably the normal flow for these meetings or meetings in general, y'all shouldn't hold meetings this way again. Allow public comment first so that your responses to the last minute presentations have a lens from the community's input. This felt like a conversation between two entities that already have ample time and access to each other, and speaks volumes on how you prioritize community-led recovery. Didn't feel good. These meetings were designed for us. The gap between what's been promised and what residents are receiving is disheartening. We were told March would be the month we would finally see and feel recovery. And what we're experiencing instead is an administration still fumbling to build a framework in the middle of the response. And we are feeling the ramifications of that as a community. This is not about control or coordination, because when it was time to have a plan to detain our youth last weekend, the city showed they can move swiftly with coordination and urgency when they want to. Which makes me ask a very simple question. How do you sleep at night? How do you sleep at night, knowing families are still navigating unstable housing 313 days later? Knowing we will have gone through summer, fall, winter, and now spring, and you're still failing. But as you know, while the city has been slow to deploy, the people have not. We brought 120 residents together over the weekend and asked them what this next phase of recovery should prioritize with the largest unrestricted interest-bearing funds the city has. There was a list of 10, but for the sake of time, I'll name the top 3. Number 1, accelerated home repairs with plans for more funding being allocated for repairs than demolition. Number 2, stable, dignified housing and whole family support, so families aren't in unstable conditions while being displaced and rebuilding. Residents are asking for something just as critical: North City retention plans and incentives to keep North City in the hands of North City residents. These are not complex ideas. These are the baseline of what recovery should and could be. So when those things are still not happening at the scale after months of playing in our faces, this stops being about planning and becomes more about the principle. Recovery cannot continue to be something that's seen only on paper, and we'll never be the type of people to sit back idly and wait. So we urge this body to move or be moved until North City is whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marie. Next, we have Keith Lofton.
First of all, I'd like to say good evening. My name's Keith Lofton, and I represent Ward 14. Good evening. My name is Keith Lofton, and I am a Community Advisory Board Manager for the St. Louis Harm Reduction Coalition. Our office is located in the South City, Ward 7. The BHRC is a coalition of people in the St. Louis area who are invested in the healing and the well-being of Black folks who use drugs. The Black Harm Reduction Coalition Community Advisory Board is made up of 8 Black community members who have been personally impacted by substance use and addiction. We are the community. We suffer right along with our community. We hear their frustration and listen to their stories every day. We are committed to empowering our people to advocate for themselves, and so we are here today to do just that. In 2023, the idea for our coalition was created in response to racial disparities in overdose deaths in St. Louis. At that time, Black people, especially Black men, were twice as likely to die of an overdose than our white counterparts. Even though both groups use substances at similar rates, this is a direct and life-threatening consequence of the history of racism in this city that our people have been living with. The tornado on May the 16th was a collective trauma for our people. To this day, people are still suffering. People are expressing feelings of hopelessness and abandonment. People are continuing to lose their lives even months after this tragedy occurred. At the Black Harm Reduction Coalition, we know that trauma leads to more substance use, and more substance use without stability leads to more overdose death. Let us be clear, the lives of our neighbors are at stake, and you all have the power to repair this harm right now. Our communities were already dealing with housing instability and wealth loss, poor health outcomes, environmental hazards, underfunded education systems, and infrastructure issues. This tornado added another layer of harm. We need real investment that improves health outcomes, strengthens housing stability, and invests in education and youth support. We need affordable, decent housing. We need resources that actually reach the people mostly impacted. The RAM settlement should be used to help repair homes, house families, and rebuild our communities. We are calling on the city to use more of the RAM settlement funds to support North St. Louis, especially folks who are still recovering from the tornado. What has been allocated so far is not sufficient to repair the generational harm that has been done to the north side. The city has a unique and rare opportunity to repair the harm that North City has endured for all of our lives. We urge you to listen to the people and restore North City. Our communities deserve to live safe, healthy environments with dignity. We all deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lofton. Next, we have Stouffer Sudlick.
What's up? I am Topher, Christopher Sudlick. I live in Northwoods, but I organize around the city. I work with a number of groups, and tonight I'm here with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the PSL. And the first thing I want to do is I want to echo the points of Action St. Louis and 314 Oasis. These are groups that we should be supporting. They're on the ground. They are people who know their neighbors, who care about this city, and who've been doing this work for a very long time. Even before their current organizations existed, they were doing this work in community. They deserve trust, they deserve respect, and they deserve a first shot at having a say in this stuff. Groups like 314 Oasis specifically have a huge impact at a low cost. If you look at them on the ballot, on the balance sheet there, they're smaller than what we spent on individual reports from high-powered consultants that had zero impact on the city. Meanwhile, they've helped thousands of people, and they're really changing the culture around. I think that it is incredibly important to think about why we direct money into certain kinds of groups and nonprofits and not into others. You know, the United Way is great. If you look in the appendix of this packet we've got, they are distributing all the funds. We're basically using them as the end tool to get money out to the people. And, you know, they have a lot of great programs. They help a lot of people in the city and around the country, to be frank. But they also have constraints based on who their donors are. If you look at their donor list for the greater St. Louis area, it's basically the same as Greater St. Louis Inc. a group that's had a long-term interest in gentrification and forcing people out and closing down homes and demolishing neighborhoods to replace them later with something new for other people. So when I look at the fact that we're spending so much more on demolitions than on repairs, it kind of makes sense. And when I look at how the groups that are on the ground doing the work are starved, people aren't getting connected to the resources they need, I see right here exactly why. We're not doing this the right way. We're not trusting the people. We're putting money and power into the hands of people with conflicts of interest, with something to gain from doing wrong here. And that is not how we should be doing stuff. And, you know, we see the same thing happening with the police board issue, where the Board of Aldermen is acting like they're powerless, like they don't have any agency in this situation. But y'all, the mayor and the comptroller, set the budget, set how this stuff goes. And if you stand for the people and with the people will stand with you. But if you keep failing us, we aren't going to have your back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sudlick. Next, we have Gwen Marshall. Gwen left. I need that back, sir. Okay, next we have Ariane Johnson.
I'm Ariane Johnson from the 10th Ward. Got a couple questions for a couple of different people. They don't need no more money, man. They come here with bull every time. And they not gonna be they're gonna be non-accountable at the end. Y'all know what that word means? I know y'all do. I seen an article today about the Board of Aldermen, about non-accountable. I'm talking to the mic. Ordering 61090, y'all familiar with that ordinance? The Aldermen, where y'all gotta put down what y'all spending. But everybody, 12 members of the board, decided to file non-accountable. So that money goes straight into their salary. So when I did 5,500 times 12, that's like 66,000 that could have been towards something different. But y'all, it's in the writing by bylaws for y'all to tell us where the money going, that extra 5,500 expenses, correct? But none of the aldermen, 12 aldermen, you didn't do it, boss. 12 aldermen decided they don't want to tell us where the money going. So you think we're going to expect y'all for them to tell us where the money going? They're going to use the same words on us. Not accountable. Because y'all did it. It's the article. Look, anybody got something to say about that one? Is it true or not? Did you file non-accountable? Yes. Did you file non-accountable? Yes. Did you file non-accountable? Yes. They ain't got nothing to say about it. That's $5,500 extra. So if they not telling us about that money, what do you think they hiding? That's just my point. And then we talk about the Rams money. When I think about the Rams, I remember going to games when I was younger. And I remember the Rams took that away from me because we ain't got a football here no more. So they took it away from the youth. So the ones that really wanted to be football players, they ain't get this experience going to those games, so they got other things they've been doing. So why none of that money going to the youth? Because that's the one who should have won the lawsuit, in my opinion. And then I'll talk about the this demo plan. It's gonna make it so clean where the less people here, the less votes they gonna stay here. The less votes. Think about this plan they got. And that's in the 10th Ward too. It took me 9 months to put my roof back on because insurance gonna be playing 9 months. But I wasn't caring about that because it was more important things going on. But y'all playing in our face. Y'all not being accountable at all. Because you see, I ain't got no words about that. They not being accountable at all. I thought Julian was so much smarter than he was. And I ain't trying to get you, but it's like you have. I ain't gonna talk about it, but I really had more hopes for you. But not accountable. Could y'all talk about that money? Can we talk about that? Can we have some going back? Because I don't want to feel like I'm just talking to myself. Why did you file non-accountable for that? You not gonna talk about it? You don't think that money could have been put into the community? Y'all already double your salary, right? Correct? Megan Green, she did the same filing. The mayor did the same thing. Y'all is hiding money. They hiding money. Talking about millions and they want to talk about $50,000 for a house. You know what I just spent on the roof of my house? If I ain't have a snowplow come out, I don't know how I even make that happen. But not accountable. Y'all don't want to be accountable, but y'all want them to be accountable, but y'all hold them parents accountable for them kids that was just out there. You get me? The rails money, they don't need no more of it. You got programs out here that we trust. You got hubs that the people showing you that they trust. We gave them, in 52 days, you know what's gonna happen? It's gonna be a whole year. We gave them a lot of time. Transfer it over to hubs that can help us. That's proven. They did it with no money, so what you think they're gonna do with money? But y'all gonna be not accountable. Y'all hold the sheriff accountable, didn't you? Didn't you? We I can't hold Julian accountable. I come speak for the youth all the time, but today it was like, when I seen that article today, I'm like, God know what he want me to come talk about. Y'all being non-accountable. Talking about we ain't got our paperwork in order, but y'all non-accountable. What did you spend the $5,500 on? You went out of town? Vacation? Luxury? When I walked in here, they were celebrating downstairs because they don't understand what we're going through in a tornado situation. I'm like, damn, they got it good. While we up here fighting for some money that we're supposed to be accountable for. But now it's non-accountable. Julian, now I'm at the top now, right? I'm asking you, so why is it so much money to get rid of us and not enough money to rebuild? All that money, it's gonna be. Imagine if the whole block owned their house, they ain't gonna be able to get insurance for that house or anything. They're gonna move too. But if it's clean, then guess what? But Keaton them come here, everybody come here, they're gonna rebuild, they're gonna own it. We're gonna be able to afford to be here down here. Now everybody gonna be close to the soccer stadium, close to the Ferris wheel, and we stuck over in North County. But what? Who gonna be non-accountable? The Board of Aldermen and y'all. I'm telling y'all one thing. I talked to the youth the other day, I train the youth. They got the next vote. I can promise y'all, hey, it's only about 2 or 3 aldermen that I can vouch for. But other ones, non-accountable. Can't even, why are we here for if you're not gonna talk back to me? Why did I come here for? I'm asking the question. Because y'all here getting paid, wasting the money. Big envelopes full of things. Non-accountable. When I looked through there and I looked at that list, I'm like, wow, they could have donated the money. They could have paid personal use. But y'all, some of y'all chose just to say, it don't matter. I ain't got to fill this part out.
Mr. Johnson, thank you. That is.
So I understand, ma'am. You gonna have to the police stop today because they not right, y'all not right, and y'all need to get. They gotta go. I don't know why they even come to the meeting for. Wasting our time. This room was packed when I got here. Now ain't nobody even here. That was the whole plan. Not accountable. That's so much money y'all wasted, and I'm gonna leave. But the youth is our future. Y'all gotta give me a dime, but y'all gonna be accountable when I get through. That's my whole thing. I'm gonna make y'all accountable, or y'all ain't gonna get reelected. It ain't gonna happen because y'all plan is to get rid of North St. Louis. That way y'all can keep getting reelected. But it ain't gonna happen like that. We got a better plan.
Thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. Now accountable is the word for the month for y'all.
Next, we have Michael McLemore.
All right. Good evening. I'm Dr. Michael McLemore from Ward 12. Really, I just want to talk about how we got to this position. And a lot of the things that I've been studying tornado relief and everything nationwide for the last couple of months. And just for people who aren't aware of certain things, I'm just gonna, spew some facts that'll explain why North St. Louis is in the position it's in. So 1, FEMA bases relief funding on real estate market and property appraisals. Most Black neighborhoods are banking deserts, neighborhoods abandoned by mainstream banks. As a result, many Black Americans live in neighborhoods that are less desirable, have fewer amenities, and have lower levels of investment, leading to lower property values. The consequences of this historical financial exclusion can be devastating for people recovering from disasters. After disaster hits, FEMA determines the allocation of relief funding based on prior property values. The agency does not take into account historical racism's role in determining market values. Without responding to this reality, FEMA perpetuates the cycle of systemic racism. By failing to consider historically racist policies' effect on the market, FEMA reinforces the effects of those racist systems. As a result, Historically disadvantaged communities do not receive adequate funding to rebuild properly. If FEMA continues assigning aid based solely on market real estate values and property appraisals, communities that have been routinely excluded and discriminated against are doomed to receive insufficient funds for their needs. The vicious cycle of discrimination and underdevelopment will continue. And I say all that to say, when we say that recovery of the North Side is not equal and would have not been tolerated anywhere else in the city, that's not just our opinion. That's literally the playbook. That's how it works. So when we talk about how different other neighborhoods would have been responded to in a much better, quicker fashion, this is the national model. St. Louis didn't reinvent the wheel with how bad this recovery is. It's the playbook. And I'm hoping that, allocating additional funds from the Rams Fund and also from philanthropic, aids as well, because they've expressed that they will not kick in until the city does. And that's the holdup. So we have to be able to pass legislation as soon as possible to get more funds to rebuild North City. Thank you.
That will be all.
That's it. All right. Any following questions from alders? All right. Seeing none. I want to thank everybody for coming out today, for asking those questions. We will have another meeting at the end of the month of April, which I got to get out to the committee members. And I do want to personally, just from last meeting, apologize to the committee. My goal was to have, and the public, to have this meeting in the public, but I am committed to being held accountable to making sure that we have the next one in the community, hopefully somewhere in an impacted area. So that is a commitment of my own that I will make. And with that, we have, do we have any acknowledgement of written testimony?
We have none.
Any announcements? Seeing no announcements, I would like to excuse the Alderwoman from the, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, second by the Alderman from the 9th, that we adjourn. All in favor, aye. All opposed, motion carries.